Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Hot Path Show. That's right, we got a special Power of Two episode. This is episode 2 to the 4. I'm joined by both of my Scandinavian friends here, Dani and Tobias. Welcome in, you guys.
Hello. Thank you.
So yeah, we can just kind of make our rounds here. So welcome in, Dani. How you doing today? How have things been going over at the Unity Sweatshop?
I mean, pretty good, I would say, because we have just put out a new announcement very recently.
Yeah. A lot of
Wednesday, something like that, I feel like.
Yeah. The days have just all been blurring together. A lot of stuff been going on. So yeah, definitely a lot of really cool things. Sounds like you guys have been very busy over there at Unity. Of course, we will be getting into that later on in the video. Again, if you didn't see, Unity put up a big forum post just kind of talking about, all the recent, development milestones that they've reached and things that are coming up in the future. So, lots of exciting things to go in there. And then anyways, Tobias, welcome in. How's it going for you?
It's going good. I'm deep into consulting work and I'm having fun with some diving into other people's code.
Awesome. Yeah, of course, fresh off the release of your game, Just Read the Instructions, and already right into doing some consulting gigs. So yeah, very exciting stuff with that.
Not full time, but you gotta spread your put some eggs in some baskets every now and then somewhere.
Yes, definitely. Haven't already checked out Just Read the Instructions, you can do so on Steam right now. It is available in early access. Again, a co-op 4-player game where, Tobias, you want to give a quick little pitch on it, actually?
Yeah, 4-player co-op, tons of enemies. That's why it uses dots fully. It's a it's almost as much dots game as you can make it at this point anyway. And you go into a virtual Matrix inspired simulation and you kill a bunch of AI spawned enemies and try to crack the virtual thing, whatever. I'm doing a terrible job at this, but
No, yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great game. Definitely, like you say, it really shows. I mean, you learn very quickly when you're playing this game why you kind of had to use dots for this, because there's so many enemies and so many dynamic things happening on the screen. It gets very crazy very quickly, and
oh, nice, yeah, I hope so. I spent a lot of time optimizing it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, before we get into kind of some of the main topics of the show here, just have a couple quick little announcements that I do want to make. So one thing that I kind of briefly mentioned last week is was kind of making some changes to the Patreon and YouTube support and everything like that. So the Hot Path show is now available for everybody in podcast form. So you can actually go get it on Spotify now. Which is available in audio and video form. I've uploaded, I think, the first 8 episodes so far, and I'll probably have I'll probably get caught up with them this afternoon. So go check that out. I do have the links in the description of this video where you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. You can also get an RSS link if you don't want to use another podcast service. You can just kind of paste that into your podcast app or whatever. So yeah, that is all available. So definitely exciting stuff. So go subscribe over on Spotify or your podcast app of choice. What's that?
My voice is on Spotify now. That's
your voice is on Spotify. The AIs are now being trained on your voice.
Yes, indeed. All right, continue.
All right. After that, do also want to mention that Unity is going to be hosting a Netcode for Entities webinar. That is, Wednesday, May 15th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's again just kind of a brief little overview onto Netcode for Entities, kind of going into that a little bit. If you're interested, I'll get a link and put it in the description in a little bit, but I'm sure if you Google, Netcode for Entities webinar, you can find that pretty easily. Unity's been putting on a bunch of these webinars lately, just a bunch of, random things like Apple Vision Pro, dots, everything like that. Dani, you've joined in on a couple of these, but I think it's cool that they're doing these kind of webinars. How do you kind of feel about, some of these things that they've been doing lately?
I mean, I love the fact that they're doing it. I wish they would contact us more, but otherwise it's pretty good. And they've gotten like over time they've gotten better. Like initially they had a very rough start, I feel like, but at some point they like obviously because you learn dots as well as you go. Also the way that it's taught, I think that they're getting to a better pace now. Stuff like understanding the workflow between game objects and entities, and yeah, I think it's definitely gotten a lot better, and it's really good now. It's you can use the stuff in there, and there's some high production in it as well. And
yeah, definitely.
And especially if it's Mike Geik, I feel like Mike Geik definitely knows.
Oh yeah, Mike Geik's great. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He knows how to make something interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like they've been doing a good job about gathering feedback from the community and, kind of improving on the streams based off of that feedback and everything. So, yeah. So, yeah, once again, the Netcode for Entities webinar is happening May 15th, 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Oh,
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Esteban's putting it on.
Ah, fun.
And then another thing that I wanted to share real quick is JetBrains. They're actually putting on a quick little challenge they let me know about today.
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. So the idea is they created a little asteroid game. You can actually play it in your browser if you're using, I guess, any other browser than Microsoft Edge. For some reason, it didn't work in Edge, and that's what I'm using right now. But
why are you using Edge? I gotta ask.
I'm just too deep into the Microsoft ecosystem. It works for me.
Well, to be fair, isn't Edge built on Chromium now?
Yeah. It's the Edge Chromium one, so it's
Okay, it's slightly better, but I'm still impressed. You're the first person I've heard that actually uses Edge.
But one thing quickly, I don't know if Johnny is loud or Dani is low, but do I appear low or high compared to Johnny?
I can make myself louder. Does that help?
Yeah, that's
okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Do we sound kind of about the same level now?
You're still a little bit louder, Johnny. I don't know.
Okay, maybe I'm gonna turn mine down. You know?
But actually, this now that we are 3 people, it's probably easier for us to relate to each other because Johnny and Tobias actually sounds the same level to me.
Okay, so I think.
Well, so am I lower now? I just lowered myself. Is it like noticeably lower?
No, it's not noticeably lower. I feel like
mine bottoms out a bit. So I did turn mine down a little bit, but
I think it's fine.
Anyways.
I think fun banter is still good for the audience, so it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. By the way,
right.
Another fellow Edge user in chat.
Wow, okay. Maybe I've been missing out on something. Maybe I've just been too hurt by Internet Explorer.
Anyways, JetBrains Asteroid Game Challenge. The idea is they put out basically like a simple, very simple little asteroids game, and they're basically like kind of opened up this little challenge where you can basically put some ideas out there about some things that you'd change, or if you even want to take it a step further. You can like actually submit like a pull request and then provide a link to the pull request of the changes that you would like to implement in the game. Basically, they're just going to be taking the top 4 winners about the most interesting suggestions for them, and the winners get a 1-year JetBrains All Products Pack subscription. So that's a good couple $100 subscription right there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so you get like all the literally all the JetBrains stuff. So not only like the C# and C# tools and everything like that, but I'm assuming like all their C and different IDEs. Yeah, C
something WebStorm, I think it's called.
Yeah. All the Java things and
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, they're basically all the same, pretty much.
Yeah. But kind of more fine tuned to each language and everything like that. So. Yeah.
I think this is pretty cool, especially because it's like what they're doing here is sort of Unity related, but it's not like their product, which is interesting. Like it's the way that the company works, from my understanding. Like if you have seen JetBrains' YouTube channel, there's a video up on how they do dog fooding, and for them, dog fooding is not about like demoing their product or trying it for fun. No, it's because they use it every single day to make stuff. And then they have time for making a little Unity game, and then I'm making a Unity game. Therefore, I'm obviously gonna use the JetBrains product while I'm developing that. And then because they're now making a game in Unity and using their product, they're realizing, I'm missing this thing that would make it really great. I think that's a really cool workflow, and I think that's also kind of why they must have done this, like to have more people trying stuff out with their IDEs and see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I think JetBrains is really good about that just in general. I know, some of the feedback that they've given me is like, some of the improvements, I guess, to their editor has came from things that they've learned from some of my videos. Just like, I think one thing that they'd mentioned is like, when you add that require for update tag inside of your different systems, like JetBrains now has like a thing to automatically detect that. And I guess they kind of learned that from just going through some of my tutorials, which is pretty cool.
I mean, and the interesting thing here is there's times where it does go wrong, where they're trying too heavily to help you, and actually they get the guiding slightly wrong. For instance, I saw recently there were some problems with System API Query where it would say that, this component is not supported, while it actually was, because it thought that only aspects, enablables, and one more thing, buffers were allowed. So anytime you were using like enableable refs, or you were using a managed component or a Unity engine component, it wouldn't work. And there's been a ton of cases where I've noticed JetBrains does get it wrong, but it gets it right so often that it's so much better than any other workflow I've tried.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Tobias, you need to enter the challenge so you can get yourself a JetBrains subscription.
We should see if they can sponsor us sometime, actually.
What? See what?
If they can sponsor us at some point. I know that they are very helpful when it comes to events highlighting their stuff.
Yeah.
I will sing their praises if I like the thing and they sponsor me.
You become a full convert. Leave Visual Studio in the dust.
Hit me up, JetBrains. I will make sure that everybody knows. I will add one other thing. Like for our Scandinavian keyboard users, I try to tell all the new students at the university where I live that the most important thing for you guys is to switch to an American layout on your.
Yes.
I don't know if you have done that.
Yes, and also especially important on top of that, if you are from a country that still has special letters, but don't really use like the umlauts and stuff like that, is to use international US layout, international.
That's what
version, I mean. But with the Alt DR key dead, there's a version you can just search dead Alt DR key international layout. Take that one.
Okay.
Because it means that stuff like in Denmark we have 3 letters called A, Ø, O. Those I just have to say LGR L, and then I get an A. LGR L. Get
well,
so on.
I don't know.
It's very easy to get the letters that are missing from the keyboard at that point, but it's so nice to program with because you can like do bigger than, less than, curly braces and all of that.
Yeah, I just do whatever keyboard I have in just straight up US, and I bet there's an improvement I can do there. But I just like the Swedish special keyword and they don't do that anymore. They do other stuff, which is much more necessary when you write code, because I don't put our special characters into code, obviously. So
I'm saying it because like anytime that you then try to press in international layout, anytime you press one of the special keys that you need for your language, I don't know if you guys use special letters that much.
Yeah, we have a lot of special.
Then it will like not allow you to put it in unless you press it twice, sort of situation.
I don't have
confirm it.
There's some keys where you have to confirm it, like backticks.
Yeah, for me, none of that is an issue. I have both US and the normal US keyboard layout and the Swedish layout with Alt Shift, and I just tab between them whenever I need my own language weird symbols. But otherwise, the point I was trying to make was that. I always recommend everybody to do that and to learn how to program with the US layout, because you get a lot less strain on your fingers and it goes faster to code. And now maybe if JetBrains sponsor me, I'm going to add that to the list, and they're going to have a ton of customers from our university.
There you go.
I mean, especially university, it's good to recommend because it's free for universities.
Oh, this is true.
Christ,
yeah. That's as long as you have a GitHub student account, which most universities provide you with, then the whole JetBrains suite is part of it.
Yeah, I guess they should really try to make me an ambassador.
All right, do you often go to the university? Teach?
What?
Do you often go to the university to teach?
No, not like teach, but I've been like having presentations and stuff.
Yeah,
and
like a guest lecturer sort of.
well, not even the guest lectures actually. More on the conference you were at.
Oh yeah,
I've been
yeah.
having something on that conference for every year since 2015, I think.
Oh,
So
I hope they invite me again. It was really fun.
yeah, you should come either way.
Yeah,
I
think
hope
I'm
they
still on the
invite me
front page
too.
of that.
Oh yeah, Johnny,
Yes.
Johnny, you should come. You should come. You can sleep on my couch if you don't find any place.
Nice.
All right, we're getting super off track here. Continue with the programming.
Yeah, but no, check out the JetBrains challenge, and then I also wanted to remind you all that you can support our show over on Patreon as well as now through YouTube memberships. By the way, I do see that we do have a new YouTube member, so shout out to David there.
Oh, already?
Yeah. So Patreon and YouTube memberships, you basically get the exact same rewards for depending on whichever one you want, just whichever one is more convenient for you. I'm kind of slowly going through week by week and just updating the backlog of Patreon content and migrating that all over to YouTube. So I basically have all the February bonus episodes up right now for all the YouTube members. And then, so after that, we can get into kind of our little warm-up topic here. Tobias, you had something that you wanted to show us kind of related to rendering sprites in Unity dots. Do you have your project open now, or are we just going to talk about some things?
I think we can just talk about it, actually. Well, we'll see. The thing is, I can't really show the things because it's consulting thing and it's half.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
But
no
I
worries
think it's.
then.
I don't think it's needed much to show. I think we
Yeah,
can just
if
talk
you
about
just
it
want to
a little
start
bit.
explaining the problem that you had, and then can kind of talk.
Yeah, it was
a
a
little bit about how you
fascinating
solved
deep dive into rendering, but I'm going to summarize it quickly. So I'm working on a game that uses Unity's Sprite renderer to draw all of its characters, and the Sprite renderer is a PNG imported as a UI object that you normally can use just in your UI, and then you put in, but you can render it in the 3D world in full 3D. Well, like just a flat plane, like a billboard situation,
kind of like
and
a Paper Mario type situation, right?
yeah, but in full 3D, so not like you know what is some
I think-
Paper Mario is
yeah.
full 3D. I think
Yeah.
I've never played Paper Mario actually, so I don't know. I just remember there's a 2D version at least. Anyway, so but it's like just billboards coming at you in 3D, and you shoot them, and there's different enemies like that. And so one of the things was that we wanted to not use PNGs. So we wanted to use, because all of the different assets has SVG files, so like shape-based vector things. And the idea was to take the SVG and import them as raw, so don't convert them to PNG. So then you can like basically render everything as like single color vertex or shapes, like just straight up polygons with just single colors. And that is just like vector graphics essentially, but just converted into polygons with the vertex color. And what I noticed was that if you render it with the transparency shader, so a shader graph or a shader that has transparency going through this transparency pipeline, then you get everything properly. But remember, there's like you can have stacked shapes, so you have different shapes from the SVG file that is stacked and rendered on top of each other, and for some reason in transparency mode everything worked fine, but transparency mode is very expensive to use, and there's no reason, because there's no semi-transparent things. It's just either it's full color or it's no color. Right. So we tried to just to use the opaque version of everything, and then we just got a complete sea fighting mess. So all of the different all the different shapes that was just normal polygons with colors, all of them were just stacked on a single line and just sea fights completely.
So even though they were all in different world positions, though.
No, but the thing is, sprite render in Unity.
Sprite renderers have ordering based on the hierarchy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, not in 3D. not in 3D. This is not in the UI.
Oh,
This is just
okay.
a simple sprite render in just straight up, and there is no Z component to the mesh in the. If you look at sprite render, it has like, oh, this is the vertex and the UI and UV buffer and everything that makes up the shape. It's just float 2 everywhere. There's no Z, so it's literally always on the same line.
Not even
So
a layer
unless
priority.
you what?
Not even a layer priority.
Nope,
Like
nothing.
interesting.
Nothing. Yeah, that's and the thing that I asked you about was like, why the heck does it properly sort internally with one single rendering call? Because that you can see in the frame debugger. Why does that render properly all of the different sub shapes when you're in transparency mode, but then doesn't do it in opaque mode? It should never be able to do it because they're all on the same plane.
Yeah.
And they're all on in a single draw call. That was like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, so what I did was I opened this in RenderDoc, and for those who doesn't know, that's a application where you can just record exactly the API calls made to your graphics card, and you can like find out exactly the data that you're sending over, and I confirmed it. There's just a single draw indexed API call to DirectX, I think it was that I was looking at that point. Turns out that draw indexed, the one that is used in the transparency call from Unity, that respects the order of the index buffer.
Oh, interesting.
So when you specify the triangles to be drawn, it respects the order. So the last triangles becomes the last one to render, and
Did
then
you open
it
it
orders.
RenderDoc to see what command it was actually executing? Last time I looked at that call, it's literally still just a draw indexed instance. There's like a specific both in Vulkan.
The instance wasn't part of the one I found.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but and then me and Rasmus actually from Stalag dug through a little bit of the API and stuff, and we found out that there's a source over destination blending mode that in this context of draw indexed actually respects the order of the triangles. But if you draw it, but if you draw it with whatever is used, I didn't look this up in RenderDoc because I was a little bit tired of the problem. But if you draw this through opaque, then Unity will use the Z buffer, the depth buffer to order
determine.
it. And that is completely paralyzed, and all of the different triangles are just shot onto the screen as paralyzed as possible. And then everything that is on the same Z plane just starts Z fighting like crazy. So in that case, when you draw a normal opaque one, then it doesn't work, and everything just becomes a mess. So that was a fascinating thing, and I solved it. I solved the whole thing, and this is I feel clever.
Do tell me. I might have to bring it to the team.
Yeah. So the way I solved it was that when I rewrote, I added some features to the import system. This is an experimental SVG importer.
SVG import package, so you
can.
can.
So I added an option to that where it takes the order index of the shape from the SVG. SVG has an implicit order or explicit order through the order it's defined in the file, and I took that index and I baked it into the alpha channel in the color stream. So RGB and then the index of the shape and not alpha, because we don't have semi-transparent, so there's no use for that data. And then in the shader, I just stagger it with a small offset with the value that comes from the alpha channel, and you just require like 0.0001 in like differences between the different layers, and they are
classic Z fighting.
Perfect. No, they just perfectly.
But it's a classic way to fix it. Is like
offset. But like in the CPU sprite render part of it, there is no possibility. There is no Z.
Yeah.
So it has to be done in the end in the vertex shader. So anyway, very strange that you can actually respect the order of the index buffer when you render. I thought everything on a GPU was as parallelized as it can be. But apparently, if you throw a bunch of triangles at draw indexed, it will make sure to render everything bottom to last.
So what happens if you have more than 256 objects, though?
Then my solution is not working anymore. But I can tell you that there's probably a rare instance where there's over 20 elements in one of these pictures.
So this doesn't sound like a Dutch game to me.
No, this not. It's actually, well, I can tell what game it is. It's Sulfur. It's if you search on this is a demo of this on Steam. Okay. So if you look at Sulfur, you will be able to see it. And I think it was like very, very popular the last Steam Fest.
Got it up right here.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I know this. Yeah. Wasn't that a studio made by one of the designers behind the art of Triband and Flat Ponies that both have a similar art style for What the Golf and all of that?
That's probably true. I don't remember. I know their CEO pretty well, so we got in touch and they needed some help. So here I am. But everything you see here is everything you see here is mostly everything is Sprite renderer based.
Oh,
so
wow.
Just flat. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Like really a lot. So I don't want to say too much about this because there's part of where I'm going and NDA stuff. But there's there's some slight challenges by having everything rendered via Sprite renderer, as people might imagine. If you
I can imagine, but holy shit, they are definitely achieving something with that.
Yes, it's like such a cool game looking, and like it's just crazy unique.
Yeah, so, I need to play that. Holy shit, that's yeah.
Yeah,
you just sold the game to me now.
So then wait, so if you're using sprite renders for everything and you're using opaque textures, does that mean you're using like the alpha clipping to like basically clip out the edges?
Okay, so let's try here. Danny, that's the answer to his question is no. Do you know why? Since
I didn't listen to what was the question again?
Ask Danny this, see if he knows.
I was asking to see if he was using alpha clipping on the material to basically cut out the like image on the sprite renderer.
And Donnie, I don't blame you if you don't know this. Not at all. I'm just curious if this is a known fact.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you discard, at least if you just use alpha clipping, I think it doesn't also write to the stencil.
Well, there is no alpha clipping needed at all. There's no alpha needed, period, in this, because every single UI imported type of alpha channel-based asset, like in UI or whatever, it actually gets cut out into an actual submesh by default through.
That's right.
Yeah. So there's no when you render an UI element with the something that looks like it's transparent, it doesn't actually have any alpha clip or transparency. It's an actual mesh that's just with an algorithm.
The same goes even for normal sprites as well. They also will cut out a nice little mesh for you.
Yeah, but it's a little bit nuanced, and there's some performance consideration around this where I'm gonna have to deal with. But essentially, most stuff that rendered as sprites are cut out actual meshes.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest differences between when I'm doing a quad approach, just getting the offsets of a sprite, versus an actual sprite where it will do meshing.
Yeah, gotcha. It just cuts it out, which is much better since you can use opaque renderer. And
I guess opaque rendering can still do alpha clipping.
But okay.
That's basically what I was asking.
Yeah, but I mean, like, remove all of that and just
right, because you're using sprite renderer. I was thinking of this because I was recently working on something where I was applying something to a mesh and used an opaque texture because the like sorting just kind of like worked better. I don't know if it's the exact same issue, but something probably similar. But then used the alpha clipping to basically make like, I think I was using like doing like a dashed line basically.
Yeah. But anyway, a fascinating problem to dive into. I had to have a long conversation with Rasmus, with ChatGPT, and with a lot of documentation before I figured out how to do it. But it's amazing, and I'm so glad I figured it out, because that game deserves. I mean, it's such a cool game, so I love working on it, and I hope I can really make it even better. So yeah.
Yeah.
Highly
Same. I wish
recommend it.
from your message I knew how interesting of a problem it was.
Yeah. Like when
Also, you did
I got
message me, from what I recall, just after a game jam, or some
right,
other
yeah,
busy. I remember being very busy the day, even after the reminder you put. And the guy that I wanted to message was not in the office that day, so
don't worry about it. I got so bamboozled by that problem because I didn't realize it was a cutout. So I, from the beginning, thought the transparency that they used for other purposes was needed for it to, cut out their things. And then I made a version of everything where I just tried to test some prototyping thing. And for some reason, I just jumped into their shader and I removed the opaque, the transparency setting, and took all of their existing stuff and made it opaque. And everything just rendered as it was, as normal, without any transparency. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? There's transparency there, but I don't have any transparency in the shader. What the? And then I put on the wireframe view. And I'm like, and I saw the outline of the whole thing cut out. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea about this. And I used Unity for 10 years.
I'm very curious.
I was so surprised.
Yeah, I'm very curious why I mean, why we do it in the first place. There must be like a technical reason why we do it, because from an off glance, I feel like it should be the similar speed, if not faster, to do quads. Just because like from
that doesn't, it's not completely free, so I don't know.
No, of course not. But I guess the biggest difference here is that if you, worst case scenario, let's say your quad filled the whole screen, right? Obviously alpha clip is very expensive, because now it would have to, every pixel on the screen would have to be alpha clipped individually.
Yeah.
But if you have a triangle of your mesh around it, like if you split it up into a bunch of triangles, then you don't have to draw any of those areas, right? I think that must be what gives you the performance.
Yeah. But I think the overdraw or like whatever.
That's my point. Is like
I think there's technical reasons and some performance reasons probably, but yeah. Well, you know what? I'm not sure. But it's very, very fascinating anyway. I had no idea about it, and I'm just confused that I never turned on wireframe in Unity ever and looked at the sprite. But now I know, and now everybody else here knows.
Yeah, and yeah, this is the same point I was having. I think it's about reducing the amount of pixels.
Yeah, overdraw. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's called overdraw in that situation, but something.
Well, it's sort of an overdraw, sort of just processing too many pixels versus areas.
All right, that was the warm-up topic. I hope it was a fascinating one to listen to, since I just whipped out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's definitely an interesting topic there. And yeah, glad you figured that out, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on, we can do our cash hit Unity Dots quick tip of the week. Just wanted to keep this super brief here. I have a project over here in Unity 6000. I just wanted to showcase a couple of the new kind of ECS related interface things with Unity 6000 here. So one of them, Tobias, I think you mentioned it, I think last week on the show, that basically there's kind of all the new templates that you can access for scripts. So just when you're in the project view, you can just right click and go to create. And then we have this entities menu, and then we have 4 different basically template scripts here out of the box. So there's an iComponent data, iSystem, iJob entity, as well as a baker. So you can basically just click on any one of these here, and then it just goes ahead and creates a new script for you here. And of course we can should be able to get a quick little preview of what this template is, or some reason it needs to recompile all that here. But
It's very cool to see they added it.
yeah, definitely. I guess I don't have a little preview of this here, so I'll have to open this up. But yeah, basically it looks like we do just get a regular mono behavior as well as a baker, and then everything is all properly set up for baking there.
Why don't they put the baker inside of the class? I like it more like that.
Like how that's how Ryder does it.
Yes. Well.
I mean, the amount of bike shedding you can do on a PR like that, because I was the one reviewing that PR where they added all the templates, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to not change that too much, because holy shit, you can do a lot of bike shedding if you start saying, okay, this needs to be this way and this needs to be this way because I like this better.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff like, if you look at the iSystem one, I think, or there's a system one definitely.
Yeah, there is an iSystem one, and I believe it comes with on create, on update, and on destroy by default.
And are they bursted?
I think so, if I remember correctly. Yes, they are.
Yeah. So an instance of this one is like, okay, initially burst compile was on the top of iSystem, which it doesn't need to be. So I asked for that to be removed. Anything else is going to be, hard to argue, because you can say on destroy you don't need for the most part. I think on destroy is probably the most rare one that people need. So does it need to be there? Probably not. But at the same time, it's one of the
I mean, I'm not a huge template person to begin with, so it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah,
I think while I write some boilerplate code sometimes, so I don't mind writing a little bit of it. But
I think templates is mostly for people who are learning it.
Yeah.
Learning the ropes with ECS especially. It's nice to have this, because it's what you also are used to.
Yeah, there's kind of like a lot of like little nuances that you have to remember, and you don't want to have to like go look up that web page just to basically copy paste the same thing over and over again. So
exactly.
Yeah, so there was that, and then just one other quick thing over in the project settings. If you go to editor, they now changed how you do the fast enter play mode. So there's a enter play mode option, or enter play mode settings here. It used to be like checkboxes for the different things that you would want to enable or whatnot. So you just changed the setting here for when entering play mode to do not reload domain or scene, or you could check which ones that you want to reload. Like so just changed up the interface a little bit. Basically gives you the same options, but now it's a little drop down instead of checkboxes. So pretty simple there.
One thing I noticed now, this might not be about anything, but this one, could I view the network sync attribute I suppose it showed last time? I'm wondering if you're talking about the thing that I talked about last week.
Yeah, I think that was something from your game probably.
Yeah, I don't have, it's not open source since it's my own game, but custom attributes. I think there's just to Google up C# custom attribute, and it's not that tricky. The only thing that might be a little bit confusing is that you can use it like with reflection or not reflection in runtime, and it's you need to get into
something that can be very useful here is just using type cache if people haven't tried that before. But
I think there's the whole thing about reflection. I suppose it could be a situation where reflection hasn't really gone into this person's experience, and if you just explore reflection and custom attribute with that, you will get, and then you can view what do Unity have. That's
we should have an episode on that.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just a short thing. I just noticed that one. So but look up reflection and custom attributes, and you will have a plethora of different cool stuff.
And be careful, because reflection is expensive.
No runtime stuff.
All right. Well, now we can go ahead and move over to our context switch. So this is something that we had kind of alluded to here at the beginning of the show, where Unity put out this blog post, or I guess it was a forum post the other day, go ahead.
Time for me
and
to be
share
careful.
This. Yeah, exactly. Of course, preface this by saying that anything that Danny says here is a matter of his own opinion and not of the company Unity itself. Right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And also, obviously, I'm not allowed to say anything about the deadline or even if there's more stuff on this that isn't listed, or how far we are and so on.
Yeah, definitely. But anyways, I mean, we don't need to, kind of read between the lines too much because there is a ton of stuff. This is a very lengthy forum post. Was super just pleased to see, how much the volume of things that they spoke about in here. So this was put up by Ashley, who, I probably should remember what her position is, but she's kind of like one of the heads of one of the DOTS kind of technical leads. Is that right?
What did you?
Do you know Ashley's position at Unity? What it's specifically called? I know she's kind of one of the product managers or something.
Yeah, I think she's like one of the main product managers.
I know how I could look this up real quick, actually.
They're senior technical product manager.
There you go.
DOTS.
Beautiful. All right. So yeah, anyways, she put out this awesome, very lengthy blog post here. We can just kind of go through it a little bit. Starts off just by saying, what is DOTS? I think if you're watching this video, 40 minutes in here, you probably are familiar with what DOTS is, at least a little bit. So yeah, they talked about what's been new since the 1.2 release. So these are some of the things that we've kind of talked about on some previous episodes of the show, as we're kind of going through the DOTS changelog and everything like that. But of course, Unity Object Ref is, kind of one of these new nice features that you can use inside iComponent datas to reference managed objects. And I know, Danny, you're quite fond of these, and I think we're going to do a little bit of a dedicated episode to this topic specifically within the coming weeks here, because I know you like them a lot, and I think they seem very useful, and it seems like people from the community want to learn a little bit more about them. So definitely going to be chatting about those a little bit more. But you have anything quick to say on Unity Object Ref there?
I think people should read the doc and see how they can start using it. And obviously, I've showed it off a few times at this point. It's really good, and people are starting to use it internally as well, and everyone is pretty happy with the feature. Like
Sweet.
being able to, it's very simple to understand because it's literally just a unmanaged reference to a managed thing. So you can have it keep having it unmanaged until you at some point need the managed thing. But you can keep it around, and it will, serialize correctly, and it will remap and all of that jazz. So it's very nice for that.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's very good.
So yeah, what we just showcased here, the new templates through the create menu for, doing your different ECS type scripts. This is something that I think I missed this being an actual feature. I know that this is something that I at least kind of heard little rumblings about, that this was something that was going to happen, but I guess I didn't realize that this is, actually happening. But this says that entities' IDs are now globally unique. So that means between, different worlds, if you have, if you're doing like a multiplayer type solution, you have like a client world or multiple client worlds and a server world. Now those entity IDs will now be globally unique. That is super nice, because actually one of the things that I had kind of came across during my, as I was developing out my big netcode for entities tutorial, and just kind of like having to debug things, when you'd have like one entity selected, you would move over to a different world, and the entity IDs kind of like lining up differently.
I think this situation, it's quite simplified by just saying that it's like, if you have an entity and it can have the same index across multiple worlds, you have a problem from the editor point of view, because the editor will, like your IDE, will only know the entity, so it won't know the world. And so if they're not globally unique, it will just have to think, oh, it's probably the first world, and therefore it will always get it wrong if you have multiple worlds that have a overlapping entity. So that's a problem, and actually we made them globally unique already in, I think, 1.1 or maybe at the start of 1.2 pre-alpha. We definitely had it out for quite a bit at this point. But it's so important, and people, please tell us if something goes wrong. We do have currently still a define people can add in order to get back to the old one that allocates them non-globally. But that, our idea is that will go away because everything that we're doing now does use this capability.
Now, this doesn't change, making cross-scene references any easier, does it?
No, but something else in this post might.
Okay.
But I won't say more than that.
Sounds good. Next thing, several fixes have been applied to the entities hierarchy window. Definitely this is kind of interesting that they're kind of, deciding to stick with the entities hierarchy window, just because it is something that I've had a lot of issues with in the past. Specifically, is it spitting out errors, and it doesn't have the same feature set that the regular hierarchy window does. Like, you can't select multiple entities at once.
And it's a little buggy.
Yeah, it is a little buggy. Like, I kind of like to navigate the hierarchy window with arrow keys sometimes, and that doesn't always quite work.
Moving things out of the subscene also doesn't really work. I've seen it.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird little things where it's just like, that's so annoying. And the thing is, especially when you're out of play mode, at a quick glance, the entities hierarchy doesn't look any different than the regular hierarchy. So it's not obvious. I always forget that I can't use the same,
What do you mean? There's a little green, orange bubble. Is that not enough?
I'm just saying, at a quick glance, when I'm looking at the main content that I'm focusing on and trying to interact with, right?
Yeah. I'm still confused why they chose a little orange bubble.
Yeah. What would you have done? Just a whole different design?
I mean, I'm personally a fan of what's it called, when we had the big bulky entities debug window.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I like that
the one where you can see everything going on: systems, entity, chunk utilization, all of it. It was very nice just having it in one place.
Yeah, the chunk utilization and the stats about that. I know that there's some archetype window and all of that stuff that helps you, but I think the other one was just
actually
nice.
Interestingly, for chunk utilization, they do if you use the profiler, they have a profiling module for chunk utilization, so you can actually see it over time as well.
That's available now?
That's where they wanted to put it. That's why they're arguing against the other thing.
I guess there was some conflict of couldn't really tell, but I remember seeing somewhere where somebody pointed out that, you gave us this new nice hierarchy thing, but you removed the chunk utilization, and where is it? And some Unity person responded and say for now it's gone. Bye.
Yeah.
What? It remove features?
I think for some people it's also easier to state that something doesn't exist in order to give a response than it is to figure out if someone made a different approach for it. Because a lot of the time we don't want to straight out remove a feature. We want to investigate what we can do in order to get the same sort of idea out of it. But the classic example of don't make a faster horse, make a car.
Yeah, but I think in this case it was just I would think that the solution for it to being in the profiler was probably already thought about or discussed internally, and it's just that it wasn't something that was official yet or something, so it was a little bit weird. We removed it and have fun until we have something else, but we don't know about that. Bye. But I get it. It's tricky. All right.
So entities hierarchy window. I guess if they're sticking with it, keep applying fixes to it.
I think they are aware of how people feel about the window, but it's definitely better than not having it, because if you don't have it, how do you then expect entities? Entities are a pure concept. Entities also, the only way you could do it at that point is you would have to write some debugging code, some logging, etc.
And yes, we're going to get to aspects.
Of course, it's a whole thread down below as well.
Yeah. I saw that discussion.
So yeah, we have various performance improvements to baking. Yeah, lots of good stuff in there. Some issues, or fix some issues with entity query. Entity query singleton methods now correctly handle cases where the query contains enableable components. Just again, kind of fixing some of those things that maybe weren't quite feature complete when the enableable components were added in. Several memory leak issues fixed, so definitely don't want to have memory leaks caused by the engine that we're building our games off of. If it's a memory leak, hopefully it's something that you did and you can fix rather than something outside of your control. Fix has been added for breakpoints in jobs defined in systems with system API. So always good that we can have a little bit better debugging experience there. Oh yeah, and this is just on the globally unique IDs here. And then they said that there's other minor changes to the different packages. Of course, you can check out the change logs for all those specific things. New DOTS learning resources. A couple weeks ago, they released the Mega City Metro sample, which is a big 100 plus concurrent player version of the Mega City Metro. And once again, I should mention that Unity's putting on that webinar next week where they're going to be talking a little bit about the netcode for entities. I think going to be showcasing some things around the Mega City Metro sample. Oh yeah, and then this replay our recent webinar, so that must be a different one. So anyways, lots of webinars going on, like I say.
Also, to quickly answer this one,
Yes.
this is for like 1.2. Some of this information, the one we just saw was for 1.2, which is, to my understanding, LTS 2022 and 2023.
Yeah, so
I think so.
you can install 1.2 in 2022, but if you go to the package manager, it still shows version 1.0 actually. So you just have to specifically add the version by name.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But I believe for Unity 6000 in the package manager,
It does show up.
yeah.
Now I have a dog that wants some petting here.
I had a cat that turned off my
Felix.
PC, so
Yeah, we saw you go dark for a sec there.
Continue.
Yeah, they talked about some of the GDC talks that they did. So Ashley was actually one of the people who put on this, the DOTS baking talk. That was definitely an interesting one. And I believe this looks like it has the YouTube link to the replay. So that is available right now. They did also talk about some DOTS related things on the Unity roadmap, a couple things that we'll be getting to in just a second here. Posted some new DOTS tutorials, another webinar about how to convert a game to DOTS. They have a DOTS resource roundup over here. If you do want to do some professional training, if you have like a company, if you're a part of a company where you want to kind of learn about DOTS and ECS in a more hands-on experience, you can definitely do that. For next batch of learning resources, we're preparing new content targeted for Unity 6. More details about this effort will be shared at Unite 2024. So it definitely sounds like there's going to be some exciting DOTS related things at Unite 2024. So that's very exciting. As they say, keep the feedback coming. They have the public roadmap page where you can kind of comment on some of the things that they have coming up and everything like that. So you can, comment on that and say what things are most important to you. So I would definitely recommend giving that a quick read through, because they did actually update it after this blog post. With the latest and greatest. Yeah. I didn't actually go through it, but they commented in here that it was updated. So this is just kind of what the page looks like right here. There's a bunch of these like different cards with some of the different main features. So these are like things that are implemented right now, some things that are in progress, as well as some further things that are under consideration. Okay, so getting back to this is going to be the interesting part here. So we're actually going to be breaking down the roadmap. So these are kind of like things to come, things that are on the horizon. So lots of cool things coming up here. So the first one, this is definitely a big one, the consolidation of ECS workflows. So one of the primary ways they're going to be doing this is through the unification of entities and game objects. So this was actually announced during the Unity roadmap session from their GDC, where they basically say that every game object in your project is going to have an entity representation of it. So I guess a little bit unclear from this particular post here if it's going to be like a separate game object and a separate entity, or if they're just basically going to be the same thing and you can kind of manipulate those in the same ways. Danny, I'm sure you probably can't say anything.
I can't say much, but I can say that every game object will be an entity.
Okay. All right. So yeah, every game object will exist as an entity is kind of the way that it makes it sound. So it's, I guess the way that I kind of interpret that is, we don't have kind of what we have right now, where if you want to have maybe a hybrid type setup, where if you have like an entity and you want to have a animation component, you'd have a separate kind of companion game object that kind of links the two. So it sounds like it's going to be a lot more consolidated. Those are basically going to be kind of one and the same. And by the way, I do like that name game entity.
I mean, at some point we do have to fix the whole mono naming situation. Everything is called something with mono in the name, which makes no sense if you think about it anymore.
And also, can you guys remove the U already out of mono behavior? Out of mono behavior.
Oh, are you trying to Americanify it?
Exactly. So yeah, and then so then they're also saying that the game object and entity transformation API and data structures are going to be aligned to boost synchronization performance. So yeah, it sounds like the transform system is going to be kind of consolidated. So I guess those are again can be one and the same. What was that?
Yeah, another word for it is just become one, but I won't say more than that.
Yeah, totally makes sense there. So yeah, again, the whole idea behind each game object having its own entity representation is that like they say, you can have targeted ECS solutions within your game object-based projects. So if you have very specific performance issues, or you want to improve one specific part of your project, but you don't want to make everything based off of ECS, then you can just kind of dive deep into that one section and kind of use some ECS performance improvements from that. So yeah, here we have, I think, something that you maybe were hinting at a little bit earlier, but this says scene and build workflows will be unified to provide streamlined and cohesive experience regardless of which system you use to manipulate your project data. So again, this seems like maybe we are going to be getting rid of subscenes, or at least having subscenes interact with regular scenes a little bit better. This is just me kind of reading into this a little bit and totally brainstorming.
But obviously, baking is going nowhere. I can say that much, and I can also say that subscenes have a very good use. So
I was just like, as I was like saying that, I'm like, well, there still is like a good use for having subscenes to be able to kind of load those in and out on the fly and everything like that.
Yeah, to have
Megacity
is pure concept of ECS data that is very quick to load and stream and is just runtime ready. That is still a very good thing to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at least with this kind of unification here, then maybe there is again some better ways to kind of cross-reference between different subscenes, or even if there is still a concept of a main scene, will be interesting to see. So again, all these features, they say, are going to be arriving in a future version of Unity after the release of Unity 6. So don't expect these anytime soon. These are going to be, kind of things a little bit out on the horizon. And again, hopefully we get at least a little bit more information kind of during Unite timeframe, which is happening again in September.
And I think it's also important to say here that the reason that we're not saying too much is because historically, Dots was always saying too much. We're going to do all of these things, and it's going to be done in 6 months, and it never, it's always 6 months, which means it's never going to end. So now we're trying to take a step back and say, well, for the first and foremost, we are a publicly traded company, so anything we say can be legally binding, which is a problem. So therefore, don't make any decisions based on what we,
That's why they
any
have
prospects
to
like this.
preface all their presentations nowadays with that safe harbor statement.
Exactly, but there is the second element to it, which isn't related to it being a publicly traded company, but also just good manners in general, which is to say you shouldn't have someone expect something if you don't know the deadline yet of when that thing works, or if it's even provable that thing can do the thing that you're saying it will. So I think like the idea here is that while we do want to say a lot of stuff, and we're very, we feel good about our strategy right now and how far we are with it, we obviously, can't say too much because then we're over promising, or we are like rather over deliver than under deliver, right?
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, seems like, these are just kind of the things that you're pretty confident in right now. But again, don't have any specifics on timelines or anything, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on. These are definitely a couple of interesting things that I know a lot of people have been looking forward to. So this says enabling open world game creation. Kind of interesting that they lumped both ECS animation as well as world building kind of both into this same category here. But this basically says the authoring workflow performance benefits offered by this consolidation of entities and game objects is allowing us to create improved ECS-based reworks of the editor's animation and world building systems. So of course, ECS-based animation is the number one thing that people have been asking for a very long time. They've publicly stated that this type of thing has been in development for going back quite a while actually. So yeah, we're starting to get a little bit more kind of I guess information on it. It still isn't like very specific on what they're saying about this, but basically just kind of general statements of you'll be able to have many more and higher complex characters on screen. And then again, kind of going into this world building aspect of support for large open worlds by default in your projects. So yeah, it will be interesting to see kind of what they kind of come up with these kind of larger world building things, and hopefully maybe we can get some double precision transforms. Anybody?
I know there's people thinking about it a lot internally, but I think it's a future roadmap thing. I think the article
I'm just putting that out there because I know that's something that I could definitely use, and I know a lot of people could definitely use as well.
I can say top level leadership is definitely pushing us to do it. And there's good reason that we want to do it, but obviously right now our hands are very busy, so do everything.
I could imagine. All right. Yeah, Tobias, you got any thoughts on ECS animation and these world building systems that they're kind of, had briefly kind of teased and hinted at in the past, and are give us a little bit more information here?
No, I think I'm a little bit confused to exactly what this means in practice. But I guess I will see soon enough. Right now, I started my own thing. Started tinkering with my own project a little bit with the latest version of everything. But now, since I'm a little bit pulled to the side by another job, I think I'm going to have to postpone my deep dive into everything a little bit, which it's a little bit sad since there's so much new stuff coming out and it looks very nice and shiny. But yeah, like I said, I'm not exactly sure what this means in practice. But world building, I don't really have a comment actually. I want to see what it means
Again,
Really,
the information
it's very
is
high level description everywhere.
What
So-
about the game object entities unification? How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I really hope that that's a very like integrated, tightly transparent type of deal, because like I do like baking and the concept of like authoring, baking, and then another representation for runtime than authoring, which is sort of like a related situation to here, where the game objects, I guess it's an authoring situation and then has a entity representation. But that whole process, I think, for better and worse, introduces more stuff, complexity with the baking code and everything to Unity to the Unity developing process by default. And I think it's worth it. But I also understand that people might look at that and the baking that whole concept like, well, that's complicated. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to code my mono behaviors and make stuff move on the screen, and I don't care about transforming my stuff into effective stuff. And if the entity representation that you guys are working on, or whatever is going to be, if that thing is completely transparent, then I'm just going to be applauding you guys for. But I have
I definitely think it is,
doubts.
and I also think you can get some hints about some of the things that you can do by looking at the roadmap for this. We had at GDC, I think it was, where we had a roadmap for these are the things that are planned in
the
Unity 6 and
roadmap
beyond.
talk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
GDC
So there's
talk.
some
I can recommend you look at that one. There you can see some of the, related ideas.
We should put that link in the somewhere.
Yeah.
In
There's some pictures here that really go that help you figure out.
Okay, I'm
some of what
gonna
you
check
just
it out.
talked about.
If remind me after the stream if I forget about it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we're
I'm gonna
definitely
for
aware
sure.
of what you're saying there, because
Yeah. Like I think it's totally possible, but I also think it's freaking hard. So I have
something
sympathy for
that's
the-
very cool right now is that the Dots team is now made up of people who know a lot about both Unity and data-oriented thinking, not only
That's good.
people who come from a game engine background.
Oh, right. That's good. Well, I hope it's enough. It's ready when I'm done with when I can focus more on my new fancy cool new project and not be stuck on.
You already have ideas?
I am already.
He's been prototyping something, which is why the topic of this episode today is perfect.
I've been prototyping CS 1.6. I call it.
We'll get to that in a little bit here. We'll just
Yeah.
wrap up a couple things on this here, but yeah.
And yeah, I don't think this is important. I do, speculate. Don't do it too much. There's a reason not to, overhype something and
Fair.
We'll see.
think the sky.
All right. So yeah, this one is a little bit of a bummer for some people. The deprecation of aspects as well as entities.forEach. So they start off with saying that entities.forEach, if you've been around the ECS ecosystem, going back many years to kind of the 0.17 days is where this was kind of like really the primary way that you would do things, where you would iterate across groups of entities using entities.forEach queries, where you'd kind of define your query in there, and then you'd have your whole kind of body with all the code that you wanted to run, and then you could kind of run that on the main thread or schedule it. A lot of kind of similar options to what we have with some of these newer features like idiomatic for each as well as iJob entity. And so because of these new and kind of more efficient, I guess I should say more efficient in terms of code generation and everything like that. These kind of newer APIs, they're kind of removing some of the older ones. So entities.forEach is still in support for Unity 6 as long as you're on Unity 6, and I guess whatever. I guess they haven't said what the last version of this will be in, but I suppose that an ECS 2.0 will be coming out at some point. And that's probably when they'll be removing the entities.forEach. But again, they don't really mention a timeline on this other than entities.4each is going to be supported through Unity 6, but then future releases will not have that.
Yeah.
So I think
all of the 1 versions will have it.
Okay, that's makes sense to me. Yeah, I think as far as like entities.4each is concerned, this is something that I have not touched since the newer APIs have came out. They're easy enough to write and have all the exact same features, and it just seem to kind of work better in general for me. So I don't really have a problem with specifically entities.4each leaving. Tobias, do you have any kind of thoughts on this? Have you kind of converted everything away from entities.4each?
No, and I was trying to remember there was an edge case where it's probably doable without entities for each, but there was something I did which I was just I didn't figure out a way to do. I think it was like, oh, how do you make the job bursted? But if you need
a static method.
Oh, that's it.
For the most part, it's just a static method. If you just need
so if you like in
it's either that or use an I system.
If you need a system to be managed, because you can't use the
exactly.
you can't use the I system for some reason, but you want the job to be bursted.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can still do a static method.
Okay. I gotta say that's
either that or an iJob entity.
But iJob entity, what was it that I thought about that? I shouldn't. If I come up with the reason, I will tell you. I know there was somewhere.
I mean,
yeah.
The interesting thing about deprecation of entities for each is obviously we've had to deprecate everything using entities for each over the years. So we've had to solve pretty much every single imaginable worst case scenario for this, because people were already starting to use it in wacky ways and it was breaking everywhere. And there's like fun cases where an entities for each, for instance, solves something very nicely, which is if you are doing a lot of structural changes in a for each type loop, then there is the with structural change, which will actually recache everything every time that you do it, in order for you to correctly catch cases where you're trying to delete something that was already deleted while you're iterating. There's a lot of nice things that entities for each could do in that regard, and some people would totally utilizing that to the max, which meant it was very hard to turn it into an iJob entity or a system API. But for the most part, it's just a matter of using either an entity command buffer first, or changing your approach slightly to what we talked about in the video on the differences between why should you use an entity command buffer and why you shouldn't really use it.
Yeah. I remember now, but I think iJob entity was the way around, and maybe I was lazy or didn't think about it, but I think it was actually the other way around. So if I have a system base, because I have something managed in my system and I need to whack around with game objects, and I want something that's completely that's bursted, not necessarily paralyzed, but bursted quickly, then I can't use idiomatic, because I need to burst the whole function, right, for idiomatic to be bursted.
No. Well, yeah. Okay, for idiomatic for each specifically, you don't have to burst the whole function, but you can put your idiomatic for each inside of a static function.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I guess
that one I didn't know.
But yeah,
that one I didn't know.
No, never mind. I think you actually can't, because it would still then be a static method, and then you can't pass it in. So actually, that would work. So you do have to have an iJob entity. And
that
can't have managed references. So you have to
exactly
cache some of the
there
data.
Is a very specific edge case there. I think maybe you can write enough code to get around it to get all the technical things that you want. But I think
if you show me the case, I might be able to give you an example of how to do it easily.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't think it was a big deal, and maybe I'll just stick with the 1.x and entities for each in a few cases, because I haven't had a lot of issues with iteration speed on regarding compile time and stuff. So I haven't had that problem. I know like Stanlock have like a million systems with shit, obviously, since it's a huge game, V-Rising, and they have that problem, but I haven't. My game is not big enough, so it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, it's also important to note that you can use iSystem for managed things. You just can't have managed fields on an iSystem.
Well, yeah, that's part of the I'm like having cached game objects for something. That's a reason where you would want it to be like that. Anyway, continue.
So then this is the big bummer for some people here is the deprecation of aspects. So of course, aspects. This is actually something that I had kind of used quite a fair bit towards the beginning of when these got introduced. Basically, it's the way that you can kind of think of it is a way to kind of like group a set of components and just kind of like treat it as like one thing that you can interface with. So it was kind of nice in that sense where you could say, like anything that has components A, B, and C, they all kind of are part of this aspect. And then now I can just kind of, create some custom functions and accessors and things like this on this aspect that can, just do whatever it needs to do with those three different components. And those can kind of all be, nice hidden away in that aspect. And then just, from wherever you are in your code, you can just say, instead of, remembering that full list of all these components that you need, you can just create this aspect around them and then, access those things immediately. So, so it sounds like they are going to be removing aspects in a future release of Unity ECS. So, Dani, explain yourself. Why did you specifically remove aspects from us?
Okay, there's some interesting things going on here, which is, for a while, the Dots team, was obviously very much in, we can just pull out demo features and like, we know there's this thing we want to solve. Let's solve it now, because we have a lot of good engineers, motivated people that can make a lot of things happen. I think aspects was somewhere where we knew we wanted to solve the like, okay, you want a view of a certain amount of things, so that both for the people that are very object oriented, but mostly because like even in data oriented programming, it is very normal for you to have this sort of idea of a view with some optional components to it, where you can like have extensions to a set of components having some sort of behavior when those components are together. That doesn't necessarily relate to a system, because you might be using it a lot for like targeting, enemy attacking or stuff like that. Like things where you have to use it more than one time. Because if you just have to do something once, then don't put it in an aspect, just put it in a system. It's fine, or a job, right? But if you have those cases where, my attack function, I actually have this certain amount of components that all fit the attack sort of aspect situation, then that's where it's ideal to have this, and we still want something like this. I think the way that it was implemented got very quickly very cumbersome. Not only did the source generation get cumbersome and very expensive, but it was also done too early without us having built the right fundament underneath it. And we hadn't really proved how we wanted to do source generation yet that was actually performant. Because actually, someone makes a brilliant point here, which is in chat. Where is it? Someone said something about extension functions.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, yes, extension functions can be used, and they are the perfect thing for source generation, because the problem with source generation is having to look up symbols and having to know specific type information, everything. But if you just do additive work with the source generator, it's very performant. It can get really fucking performant, actually. So you should use extension functions, and that's what you should generate. And that's not the principle that Aspects used. So it was slow, and it was also designed with a sort of object-oriented mindset instead of like a view mindset. So I don't think, as I also mentioned before, it's not that when we remove a feature, it's gone forever. It's more like we need to go back to the drawing board. We know that there is a problem. We need to address that. Let's see how we do it. I
Right.
think the comment
But
section also
maybe,
goes into that.
solve it in a different way that even could be a better solution than what Aspects ever was.
Exactly, and also to not try to just shove it out the door before we even know that it's ready to do so, because Aspects was very much just pushed out the door too quickly. We kind of knew for a while that we wanted to get rid of it, but we were it's hard to say that when we've already pushed it out. So then it becomes like a when is the right time, when is so the idea for a while was just we don't recommend it, we don't recommend entities for each, we don't recommend Aspects as highly as all the other features. We're not saying that people can use it. Also, like it's important to note that while we are deprecating Aspects and entities for each, if you are working on entities 1.n, then it is still a released version that you will get support for. So we have to still fix those support cases, so you can still use those features.
That's a very nice explanation about kind of why you decided to remove that. I think the one thing that people could be a little bit upset about right now is, again, like you mentioned, that you don't really have like a announced solution replacement for this right now. But again, like you say, this is still fully in support for the duration of Unity 6, and it's not really going to be like, after Unity 6 when this kind of fully comes into effect, which, hopefully by that time you would have kind of some replacement for it. I know, one thing that I've seen people going around like for a, use case is specifically when it comes to like doing like AI. I think someone in here mentioned doing something like for like a state machine. In my netcode for entities tutorial, I had a little bit of the things with the combat system used through Aspects, just because there are so many components that you have. It just kind of makes sense to kind of group those things together when you really only need to like interface with like one thing at a time, really.
Yeah, and also like in terms of our topic today, for prototyping and actually also for initial development, it can often just be good to just have one component initially that feels like sort of it might turn into multiple, because it's very easy to later just split it up. Like the refactoring step isn't that far away to split it up, and then for some things, like Aspects can just straight up be replaced with just an extension function instead. You can have an extension function that says, "Hey, I'm looking for everything that has to do with these two components," and then you just call that invocation directly. I can maybe at some point show some examples of how you can do an Aspect-like thing without Aspects.
Yeah, that would be great. That sounds like a really interesting solution. And again, it's something you're creating, so you have kind of full control over all that and everything.
Yeah.
Cool. Tobias, any comments on Aspects going away? Is this something that you had used heavily or even at all in your game? Is this a feature that you like to use for certain things?
I don't mind the concept. I think it's a good concept, except that for most of what Danny said about the downsides to it, I agree. But I haven't. I think I created Aspect once that I actually had a good use for. Otherwise, it's just through transform. They'll transfer Aspect thing that's not needed anymore, and the character controller that uses that, at least the version I'm using.
He's already working on a different...
I get that. And the thing that I'm using is it's obviously not the thing that's going to be very in sync with 1.2. If that's pretty immediately obvious when you open it, that it's like there's some new stuff coming soon enough. Yeah, but it works great, so I don't care. It's I just go with it.
Cool. Sounds good to me. And then a couple other things that they mention coming up. So the ECS-based character controller. So this is still technically considered an experimental package, but they said they're continuing to prepare the official production-ready release of the ECS character controller package. By the way, you may remember that we did have the developer Philip of this asset. We had him on the show with you and I, Danny, a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, he's going to be, looks like finishing some things up on the ECS-based character controller. It says you'll be able to use this package easily to add an efficient and highly customizable character controller solution for ECS, which can be used with Unity Physics, Havoc Physics packages. So, yeah, definitely exciting stuff on there. Also, they do mention to have an ECS-based vehicle controller. So they're working on a robust controller for vehicles, enabling creators to easily build low to medium realism vehicles in games built with ECS. We'll share more details on a future roadmap. So this is super cool. Yeah, not a lot of information other than this is something that they're working on. I was curious if this is something that's also being developed by Philip, because I know in the ECS-based character controller, I think in one of the sample scenes there is like a little vehicle that you can like jump on and drive around. But
yeah, there is. And also, if you have ever tried the ECS racing game, we have like a
the networking,
yeah, exactly, which is a networked vehicle with a vehicle controller. And I know they've been looking into vehicle controllers for a while, and I also know that Philip was part of this discussion. So I don't know if it's him. I won't say that, but
what you guys?
I can imagine he's very experienced in this regard. Like,
you guys didn't like the Unity wheel collider?
Oh my god! I have heard so many funny things about the wheel collider internally. Apparently, there was this like big rage thread on like an internal forum inside of Unity about the wheel joint, the guy that worked on it and had to fix something for it, and he like basically essentially ended up rage quitting. So funny, and it was there for like a year or something.
Because I remember like the first time I came across this, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I was like reading the documentation, and it's like has all these configurable things. I can set like the spring dampening and all these different torque values and everything like that. And then you go to use it, and then it's just.
I mean, it's funny because that's from what I've heard the same with Box 2D. Box 2D also has a wheel collider, and it's also that bad.
Really? I implemented Box 2D like 20 years ago or something, but in 2D it's a lot simpler problem. So
yeah, but I think their wheel collider is still fucked up from what I recall.
Yeah, I don't actually know. So
there's a wheel joint.
Oh
2D.
yeah. Unity uses Box collider, but Box 2D for the 2D. I forgot about that. Yeah,
yes,
yeah. I implemented it in C++ back in 2010 by myself. Ages ago. Fun times.
Playing around with joints is always fun. I feel like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And how stable they are. They always get around is fun. Anyways.
Okay. So yeah, ECS-based vehicle controller, pretty sweet. Consolidation of physics workflows. Couple interesting things here. So they had kind of mentioned in the past the unification of the physics authoring workflow, where in the past they had kind of had like all these separate authoring components for colliders, rigid bodies, and everything like that. And now you can really only access those through kind of like the samples tab of the package manager. So they kind of like hidden those things away. They kind of want you to have this kind of unified authoring workflow. So they say this is still in progress. So again, hopefully that, everything will be kind of feature parity, because there's still some things about, setting the collision layers and everything like that, where you can't do through authoring. And Danny, you showed us on, I think the Game Jam one where you're showing us your solution for how you set all the layers through a system, and you basically had to manually type all that stuff out there, and it was gross looking.
In the end, I actually felt like it was very flexible, that solution, which is kind of interesting.
It makes sense.
I gotta say, one thing that I like when I started making distributed instructions, obviously all of the physics things authoring was one package like it started out, and then they separated it, and then they put all of the state keeping and everything in a separate project or whatever. and then I realized after a few like 2 or 3 years of working with it that I don't really need to have the state enter, stay, exit collision thing kept by a system. It's much better to just do that on the system, on the object or entities that actually need that enter, exit, stay states tracking, and the other ones can just get this signal every frame and do whatever they need with it. Like, oh, you're inside the collider. So basically just a consistent state.
Right.
And when I realized about that, and I rewrote it in a weekend or so it used the other one. It was like, ooh, all this enter, exit, stay thing callbacks in Unity. Like it feels so nice when you see it the first time when you work it and when you're a beginner on it, and it's very nice. But then you're like sort of like, nah, this is unnecessary. This is so much simpler if you just, when you need it, you put it in. When you don't need it, you just listen for the collision events. That's just a straight up event, and it's
Yeah, I've actually have you ever used the eye collector thing in physics?
Yeah.
I have
it's
so fucking good.
Custom.
They are.
They're
Yeah,
really
eye
good, but they're
collectors.
so like learning about them is kind of hard to find in the
Yeah, no, you have to
it takes a while to figure
dive
it out.
into the API and look at how like other ones were created, basically.
Yeah, but once you know how to use it, it's so powerful. You start to think of everything that you can do with them, and it's so much better.
My level generation code is a lot cleaner because I have a lot of custom stuff like that finds whatever I need when I look through my halfway generated level and put like, oh, there's one thing there and I need to put on something else. I found that sometimes with collision, and the custom collectors are just like, makes it so much cleaner to work with that. But about just for like chat to like just once again, data-oriented design where you just get rid of the states, get rid of the data you don't need. It's always to prefer about the collision thing, enter, stay, exit. If you don't need it, don't put in enter, stay, exit, and just do the event and listen to the events. That if you just need to know if you're inside or outside, and it doesn't matter when you went inside or outside. So that's just one tip that blew my mind a little bit when I thought about it a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah, because otherwise you feel sort of a little bit trapped into like, oh, enter, exit, stay. That's how collision works. But no.
Yeah,
you don't need
and while eye collector is also only ECS, then there is also the stay function that is almost similar in a normal physics land. The on trigger stay, I think it's called, or something.
Right.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have the same sort of neatness that eye collector certainly has.
Yeah.
And eye collector is only dots physics.
Yeah.
So yeah, this kind of as we can kind of just go through the rest of this here. So this says, will the ECS physics and game object physics be unified, meaning queries will hit both physics worlds? So unclear from this. They don't say anything like that specifically in this part here. But again, maybe like they were saying, some of the unification of entities and game objects that maybe things won't be as separate. But again, that's just kind of one of the I guess implementation details that they haven't really spoken
The
much
only
on.
thing that they're guaranteeing here is that you will be able to have game objects and ECS things, and they will collide with each other and know about each other.
I would be shocked if PhysX Unity's old NVIDIA's implementation will be actually colliding with anything in physics, Unity physics. That would be insane in my mind. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think they use different strategies for collision solving anyway.
Right,
so it will be very, very strange concoction. And also the chat is talking about this being use Havoc, but yeah, it's just one of the backends that you can use to do the solving, and Danny, maybe you have more information, but the way I view it is that Havoc just adds a slightly more optimized state version of the like collision thing, not the actual like collision world construction. That's basically the same thing, and it's just when stuff hits dynamically each other, that's when Havoc does its thing and does it stateful and faster.
I don't exactly remember how many things are actually, flipped out by changing to Havoc, but the basic idea is that there's community physics and there's Havoc physics, and you can later on in your project flip the switch and say Havoc instead, because then you get all of the Havoc tools, because they do have some tooling to help you profile physics events and stuff like that. And also the core idea is that the two, from like an interface structural data point of view, they are a match.
Yeah. I got slightly better performance from Havoc, but it was negligible.
I think that's the idea too, that you get slightly better performance, and also it should be slightly more stable.
Yeah, but I think that's a stateful part.
Oh yeah, I think there's also like different scenarios where you would want to use one over the other, other than just the stateful / stateless nature of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then just kind of going through some of the updates that they're saying here. So they have a new update to how the broad phase works, to update it incrementally. So rather than building it from scratch every frame, it can just kind of update those incremental changes, which seems like that could be a massive performance win for most scenarios where things aren't really changing that much. So I think that's going to be a major performance win there. You have something to say on that?
I think V-Rising has a custom thing where they this is probably not the case right now, but I know that they Rasmus talked about sometimes that they have a version of where they don't rebuild it every frame because it's a performance thing, and they just have it more static, and then they have like some other additional boolean that makes you be able to turn on and off different collision, because in the rising you basically just chop down a tree and the tree is gone, so you don't really need to have complex rebuilding of it. You just need to go away
here
and
there. Yeah,
that's it.
I think they have a video on the Unity YouTube.
I know that it's not like a secret thing because they talked about it a little bit, but I don't know how much in depth. I just know I talked about this with them with the rest of 2.5 years ago when they started working on that thing. And
it's more if people are curious to know more about this topic, because it is an interesting one. Then I think you can just search Unity Stunlock. Or something like that, because they went into that in a lot of detail on this is why it's nice that Dots actually has the code provided, so we can change all of this physics behavior. So this
is such a good stream.
Make it fun.
I need to go back
Make
to
it
that.
Fast. Yeah, very good stream.
Definitely. And a couple other things they do mention is a new collider.bake transform. So this kind of gives you the ability to basically modify transforms at runtime. Which is something that was kind of possible before, but it was a little bit weird the way that you had to kind of go about doing it. Because the component that you have for these physics colliders, it's actually a blob asset reference, and then you have to basically use a pointer to get access to the actual collider. If you want to make any modifications to that, you can do that, and then of course update. And then if you also make any changes to those colliders, any entity referencing that same collider, they're also going to all receive those updates. So there's just kind of a little bit of things that you had to consider with that. So it seems that they might be bringing a little bit of a nicer workflow to that. So definitely some cool stuff there. Also mentioning enabling cross-play multiplayer development creation. They actually have a full multiplayer roadmap, another kind of one of these that they kind of go into. And again, this is another pretty lengthy blog post, not as lengthy as the other one, but they have some examples, resources about how to get started, multiplayer in Unity 6. I wonder if they talk about any of the... so one of the future developments here is the kind of unification of netcodes, so kind of unifying the netcode for entities as well as netcode for game objects. This is kind of something that they're going to be kind of detailing within here. But yeah, going back to the main kind of ECS release here. So yeah, some other improvements. We can just kind of go quickly through these last couple ones here. So improvements to parallel scheduling and configuration. I think this is where they talked about, where they talked about by default systems all run on the main thread, but they want to give you the ability to do some out of the box parallelism where you can actually have systems run in parallel by default, which would be kind of cool. You get some profiler enhancements here, improvements to entities graphics performance. Of course, always good to have, performance on the rendering side, specifically when it comes to, say, mesh deformations. And they say we're currently working on improving the GPU, or actually it works on any platform with GPU compute capability. So that's basically going to be, any kind of modern platform, as well as, hopefully the web with the web GPU as well. And also say they're working on some new educational content. So, Tobias, any thoughts on these the last couple ones here that we just kind of ran through? Anything stuck out to you at all?
Profiler enhancement. I think that's the only one that really, free performance is always nice.
Yeah.
But the profiler enhancements, like, I don't know what it means really, but I'm always up for more tools to see how fast my code runs, because that matters to me a lot.
Yeah, so they say here a new view is in progress to help you understand where your game is waiting, how job dependencies interact in the job system, and the flow of your game's data between ECS systems and jobs when using entities.
Yeah, I haven't with the event flow thing that you can turn on in the timeline view.
Yeah.
I haven't had any. When I figured out how to follow exactly what's waiting for what, and then now whenever I have something waiting for some dependency, I can easily find what's going on. But I
it works well.
Updates probably gonna make it even easier. So why not? But I don't actually miss much there. The dependency system and dependency tracking is a little bit tricky to get a hold of, because sometimes it's a lot more dependencies going down into the job scheduling than you realize, and it's hard to figure out unless you are have a very good understanding of how it works. So some more tools to see, there's this component going into the dependency also. Something like that could be good, but I don't know.
I think obviously I some of these I actually don't know anything about at all. So these are just my thoughts on some of these. I think something interesting that could happen, because all of these are future roadmap, way in the future sort of situations. But something that could be interesting is that if the more a profiler obviously knows about ECS, the more it could also help you with those job dependencies. Because right now there is a problem in the way that system dependencies differ from job dependencies, and figuring out why one job has a dependency on another thing can be sometimes a little hard if you also have to think about where that is in relation to systems. So a better profiler could even show you these are all of the systems being required because of XYZ component, because of these jobs, because of this sort of there's obviously a lot of stuff. It's just to say that there's a lot of stuff we can do in this regard of helping figure out what's wrong.
And it can be a real thorn in your sides if you don't understand why something is just waiting for a millisecond for some other long running parallel job. What's going on here? There's a
I once saw a really bad situation where someone was waiting for physics to complete, and as a result having it complete way too early, so it was just waiting on all threads for that one event. So it actually ended up when it was trying to spawn 100 little characters jittering around, like a jiggle physics what's called rigid body situation. It just immediately went down to less than a few seconds per frame.
Right. Typical.
Yeah, because it was spending all the time just waiting on the job to complete before the frame. It was saying, hey, the next frame, you should complete the physics for next frame now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I've seen some really bad examples of that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it gets better with some improvements to the
Yeah.
profiler. Yeah. All right. Long blog post.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It's a very extensive blog post here, or it's actually a forum post. So there's actually, even more that you can go into as far as people, commenting on it and saying what they like and don't like about it. I was just kind of scrolling through the other day. Seemed to be in general pretty positive. I see Wayne Games commented there. Some people were also saying things about how they are maybe a little upset to see aspects go and would like some kind of replacements for that. So overall,
I should try to
good
make
stuff.
the video as soon as possible for that. The little how you can do something like aspects without aspects.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or
Awesome.
we could even just have it as a part of the show next time you're on.
No, that's my point. Is like
Okay.
yeah, but I obviously need some sort of preparation for it. So
Yeah, for sure. And
but yeah.
this is see you at your upcoming events. So again, you can register for the Netcode for Entities webinar as well as Unite in Barcelona, September 18th to 20th. Sounds like there's going to be some exciting things there. So overall, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in the works. Definitely, excited for, I'm happy with where things are at right now and, all the improvements that have been made to get up to this point. And very much looking forward to a lot of these things coming up. So, Danny, what are kind of your overall thoughts on just where things are at?
Well, both good where they are at, and I also like the direction we're heading. Like things are being more consolidated. We get like one cohesive experience. It's gonna be fucking great. Like all of this is just about. There's so much in here that is just consolidating. So you have like one cohesive, nice little thing you can work with and do so many things. I'm so excited for it.
Definitely. Tobias, how about yourself?
Yeah, same. I haven't. I've been busy with other stuff, but I'm just one day I'm gonna be able to use all this very nice and tidy stuff. So probably like after the summer, and I'm looking forward to it.
Nice, very much so as well. So with that, we can kind of move over into our main segment of the show. An hour and 45 minutes in.
Oh yeah.
So
I might have to leave not after basically 2 hours, maybe a little bit more I can say.
That's all good. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this one, but this one actually. Again, put up a little bit of a poll over on Patreon as well as for our YouTube members for what they wanted to see as the main topic for this week. And the winner was prototyping with dots. So I feel like this can be just kind of maybe a little bit more of a laid back topic. And I feel like it's kind of good timing wise because, Tobias, like we've mentioned, you've been started to been prototyping on your next, project, of course, after you just released your game. And I know, Danny, you had, just did the game jam a couple weeks back and you showed us your project a little bit, but I think it kind of ties into the topics of prototyping. And I actually am working on a little project of my own, which I'm going to be showing in a little bit more detail on next week's show. I think it kind of worked out as a good topic of just prototyping with Unity dots. So I feel like we can maybe just kind of like start just kind of discussing things, just kind of like, from a high level view and just kind of, dive into things as we see fit. Of course, if anybody has any kind of related questions, we can kind of get into those, as we go or after, just depending on how things go. So I don't know, do either of you guys have any, place that you want to start as far as prototyping goes? Like what are some of your main strategies about how you start to prototype something in a dot specific project?
I think the first thing, even before that, is just coming up with the idea for what you want to make. It's like, do you have a somewhat? You don't have to have a concrete idea, but do you have an idea of what sort of setup you're looking for, what sort of feature set you're looking for, and don't think about it too much. Just think about it in the vague for a second, and then try to make something, because that's usually where the fun starts to happen. And where the true creativity, in my book, starts to happen. For a dot-specific project, it can often be a little hard if you don't start having something visual to begin with, like something just like a capsule in there, because if you just start writing out code, it can sometimes be a little, what's going on now? And especially systems, then you have to make a baker, and then you have to write all of this other stuff. So before you even get to the point where you have to write a baker, before you have to get to the point where you have to write a full-blown system, I find it good to just lay out the sort of scaffolding first, like create a subscene, put in a like offering sort of situation with some mono behaviors that have somewhat correlating data for what I'm trying to achieve at the moment, and then put in some structs in my code to see what sort of runtime data I'm gonna have to do, and then go from there, start iterating, and try to minimize as much as possible how many mono behaviors I have, how many structs I have, etc. components. Because I can always later on say, hey, now I'm going to split it up. This one component, it actually makes more sense as two components. Stuff like that.
So
and
you
also
kind of
just put everything in one file.
you kind of start with bigger components to begin with, and then as you start to see maybe separation, or it's like, okay, maybe there's a situation where I need just this part and not this part. That could be a good candidate to kind of break this out into two.
It's like painting a picture where you paint the background first, and then you start like getting a vague idea, and then you start like putting in more and more detail, and so finally you end up with an image. It's the same with code. Like it can be a good idea to just plop everything into an ugly file, call it something wrong that doesn't even make sense with the thing that is actually inside the file, and just start writing stuff out, and just have one big component for a lot of things. Very monolithic initially, and then you can always, like, as you start making like a damage system, you figure out, okay, the player component should not have the health. I'm just going to split out the health from the player component, and every place that has the player component, I'm just going to split it to two. Stuff like that. It in my book helps with prototyping. I don't know how you stand on this, Tobias.
I don't think I have. How do I?
You don't have approach, or do you have a different approach?
I think by coding. So
Same.
while I certainly don't disagree with you, like laying everything out like that probably means that I actually write the code for it and see what happens, and then I'm like halfway through. Like there's so many times when you write a few things and then you're not even close to making the error yet that you didn't realize, but you're like your mind is already a little bit, and you're like, oh wait a minute, this is backwards, this doesn't work, and you need to like rewrite it. Like that's how I think. So I rarely lay it out like you say.
I think my pound about. I don't think it's too different what I'm trying to say either. I think I got a little sidetracked there. My point is more that like I try to. My main focus is always just I'm gonna have to write it iteratively. I'm gonna have to just write one big CS file that has all my structs, all my stuff in it, and the point is never really to. I'm not gonna have more than a capsule in my scene, because if I start making more, then stuff can go wrong. Then I've tried to generalize before I even know what sort of objects I need.
Okay, so I have a few concrete things that I usually do, but this is not that different from when I'm making production code, which is almost like a useless concept for game making sometimes, because there's just so fast iterations when you're working on a actual sharp production project, because you need to like be done yesterday since the market is just crazy. Production code is a relevant thing when you have like a big company that has like specifications and this and that. But with game development, this really turns out that way in practice. So you just prototype, and eventually the prototype is a game that sort of works, and you release it. that's
I think that's the problem. That's worked like that for a while as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. But there are some few things that I think helps to go faster for me. Is first of all, I don't split any like authoring component and systems up into different files. I just name the file after whatever mono behavior is going to be baked, and then I put some components after that, and then I have the system, and I name it, and I don't even put authoring in because I hate the long word authoring. Not that I can't spell it or write it,
I
of
put
course,
author
but it's
in,
just.
but
But I do instead like player.cs and the player mono behavior and then player state and player data depending on data is more like a constant
yeah, all
situation.
one file.
Yeah, and then maybe state for things that might change a lot more often if I need to separate them, but often it's just player state. And then I have a player system, and those three in the same file, and that's all of
This
it.
is exactly what I do as well.
I am very confused to how many times I see people have like the authoring thing. I think Johnny, you have had it a few times in project that I've looked at where we worked on together.
Yeah.
And like I don't want to be too judgmental, but I'm like, whoa, this is so many files. Why?
I was just
like,
gonna say I definitely used to. I'm starting to do probably getting influence from you guys about just putting more things within the same file. But yeah, I used to have everything like it used to be where I was like literally everything was separate. Like each data component was its own script, and then I slowly was like, okay, well all these data components are kind of they're kind of all related. Like let me just put these all in the same file, and then now slowly kind of having data components in the same scripts as authoring components, and
yeah. So, but yeah.
It's actually an interesting clash that I had at the game jam because at the game jam I had someone who was very used to writing code that was separated into nice folders and each doing their own little thing, which oh my god, that totally didn't work for how I normally program. So like I ended up spending more time trying to figure out his system than actually writing any code. And so when finally he went to sleep, then I ended up programming during the night and just like writing it all in one file. So like the farming and the player walking all happen inside the thing called background system. Also like go in background, something like that.
On a game jam, that's like default. Like why not just shove it in somewhere?
As fast as you can, as long as it works.
Yeah, just go with it. I think also another thing that also just is for production as well as prototyping for me, but like makes it faster, is to if you're not like very very convinced that you're writing the right thing from the start. Attach the debugger and step through it once, and you will probably it's a little bit of like de-risking your code because if you just write code and you run it all the time, then a lot of time you can just write code and it will work, because it's just small things. But I think that to make your progress a little bit easier to predict, I think you should spend a slightly more time. And this is ironically something I do more on game jams than other, because the project is so small at that point that the Unity debugger is very fast. When the project grows, the Unity debugger becomes a little bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest. It's just very slow to step through your functions. But otherwise, connect the debugger, run your script, and just step through, and you will find issues directly as they come, and you will see them clearly laid out, and you can fix them immediately. And that's then like not the thing like just bet on it working straight away. You invest a few minutes into following it, and you will make sure it works, and you will fix it on the spot.
And even just reading through your code, even if you're like reading through it linearly and stepping into the functions, just on your own outside of play mode. I mean, there's things that you're going to miss, and things that maybe you intuit, you think are going to happen one way, but end up happening a different way. So that's why it's definitely important to connect the debugger to it and actually see, step through the steps that the computer is actually taking, just to kind of confirm that your mental model matches what the computer is actually doing.
Yeah, I've also found that thing actually helps you figure out what code can just go into one. Because sometimes it's very nice to have everything into one place, and if it's not if it's all like individual candy wrap, it can be hard to both optimize it, but also just figure out what's going on to begin with, because everything is scattered around. So going through a debugger also helps you figure out what you can sort of bring into one place.
Yeah, Yeah, and not, and this is truly not to plug anything, but the feature that I talked about a week ago, easy, that I renamed from auto settings to easy settings. It's like a thing where you can like just have a static class and you can push values through it dynamically through a editor window. It's basically like the inspector, but just static and global, so you don't have to have an actual instance of the object. I just pull that thing into anything, and whenever I have values I need to test, instead of using the inspector, because the problem with the inspector for me is like you need to dig through the hierarchy and stuff like that, and like most of the time it makes much more sense to use the inspector and the hierarchy and game object like normal. But when I prototype very fast in like in a game jam setting or similar like that, I just shove a bunch of values into my static class and I just access them straight away without
Same.
burst, without anything. And I just like, just like tweak everything like a madman for a few minutes through this panel, which have like 20 different settings at the same time. And I just, okay, now the character works sort of, and the fire rate is sort of well, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever, that's fine. And then I take those values and I copy them into their respective like actual Unity where they're supposed to belong, because they don't usually live in a static class for long for me, but they often start out in a static class just so I can easily change them in runtime in one place. Yeah, so that's a maybe weird thing, but I do that a lot.
I actually have an example of this because I have twice tried making a game jam using dots. One time, it was me leading the styling of the project, which is this project. And what you can see here is you have a game manager, and it just has like everything. There's even a player system in the game manager. There's a bunch of like values, very specific, concrete 0.1s and so
Just
on.
like this, just have a game.cs file.
Yeah, yeah. Well, game manager in this case, just to be fancy. And then you look at the other project, and it's like, okay, this doesn't really work. Like, look at how many folders there are for a game jam game, and I just, ended up going, okay, he's doing that thing. That doesn't really get us much progress. I'm just gonna have to make the farming. There's a farming folder. I only realized later. Instead, is in background offering is the one that has the farming system in it. What is going on here?
That is also very common, I think, and doesn't really apply to prototyping specifically, I think, but you're refactoring your way, ending up eating your own tail, sort of like you just, oh, wait a minute, I'm back to here. And it's like, where the hell did I start? And then you realize you just like take a step back and like, wait a minute, why is this system here? And why is this crap here? It should be completely wrong. And I should just read, yeah. And that happens a lot for me, that I'm, well, not a lot, but as soon as it happens, when I realize like, oh, wait a minute, background authoring contains the farming system, then I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, then you can pull it out
reframe.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you can also see here all the like put in values. Oh, times X, this times 100,000.
Oh,
All the
yeah,
values you
yeah.
probably would have pulled out normally. It's just in there.
Yeah, but is this bursted?
I think it is. Give me one sec.
Okay, yeah. Otherwise, I would plug my feature, which can, whatever. I'm gonna push it up to that store next tomorrow. So we'll see if I can
Sweet.
Show it in 2 weeks and see if people like it. But yeah, I'm thinking about the other prototyping habits I've had. But honestly, most of prototype habits I've had is more applied to game objects, because I have never made a dots game jam. Actually, I have prototyped a lot in dots, but just not the game jamming. I haven't been that brave yet, or
Yeah.
honestly, I haven't.
I can both recommend it and not recommend it. It's good for learning. It's terrible for making a game.
Yeah, it's just it's like somebody said like, oh, with the unification of Unity, ECS, and like game objects or whatever, that we talked about earlier,
It makes it so much easier.
Do we get rid of the baking because the baking is so cumbersome to write? And I'm like, yeah, I saw that and we didn't address it, but the answer is no. We still have baking.
Baking still has a use, but
yeah. And me and Rasmus has actually discussed this a few years ago when we like sort of both of us had like internalized the baking, or it was conversion at that point, and like, oh, converting from authoring to runtime, that's a very fundamental, very interesting concept, because runtime needs to
Yeah,
be
the split
faster.
between authoring and runtime is so good.
Yeah,
to
and
have.
that split is generally very annoying if you have 48 hours to make it work.
Yes.
Yes. So it's like then it's like just shove game
Yeah, and
objects
especially
into
it's
all
like
works.
if you're just working by yourself, and a lot of the benefits from that split between authoring and runtime data come when you're working with like a team, and people are interfacing with that authoring data, and then you on the back end can have more efficient runtime data.
Yeah. That's also true. So yeah, I don't know. So for me, it's just game objects normally. I was gonna, before I forget about it, I said earlier that the game I'm prototyping, that Johnny spoke about, or that you, I said I'm prototyping CS 1.6 or 1.4. I remember what I've jokingly called it, but I guess what that come from, like the original Counter Strike.
Yeah,
One of the
Counter-Strike
versions
1.6.
is
Yeah,
one. Was it 1.6 that was the most
I think
popular?
the
I
original
think.
one was 1.6.
Yeah. So the thing is that the game is based on a few just read instruction things that I want to repurpose, and I think I spoke about this a little bit. You're gonna shoot. Yeah, I spoke about this on the
Yeah,
two
I think
two
you
two weeks
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be named Chicken Stew because you shoot chickens partly. And then a friend of mine who made the Need for Speed with me, among other things, he like, oh, Chicken Stew, CS. Maybe you should. And then I said I should just name it Chicken Stew 1.6 just to mess with it, so it's the exact same, and then use that yellow, like there's a very typical Counter Strike logo or whatever, like, and I can just replace Counter Strike with Chicken Stew and then put the farmer instead of the counter terrorist guys in the frame. But that's what I'm prototyping. And
Dig
yeah,
it.
Chicken Stew Global Offensive.
Yeah, that's good.
CS:GO, yeah. Well, I need to come up with something else than Global Offensive then, for like GO.
But
So
yeah, it still should be
CS:GO.
Go. Yeah.
So like glo- uh, yeah, whatever. If
You
somebody in
come up
chat
with
comes up
something.
backronym for GO, I'm all for it.
Acronym, very nice.
Yes.
Well,
All
then
right.
here, actually, I can give just a little preview on what I've been prototyping here. So I think, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, Braid Anniversary Edition is coming out this coming Tuesday. So next week I want to do a little kind of showcase where I'm basically recreating the kind of time rewind feature using Unity ECS. So it's super simple right now. I basically have these objects that fall, and then we can hold the shift key to rewind it, and then it
Whoa,
breaks apart a little bit. But
Fancy.
yeah,
damn.
Looks good.
And I thought you were talking about getting braids and doing that on stream.
and speaking of funny names, you can probably see up in the corner, I've named it Braid Dots.
All right, Braid Dots. Yeah. Double purposing the D. Always good to have something
Exactly.
going in the name.
And then, so yeah, of course I'm going to get, more deep into this next week, but, like you say, as you're prototyping things, it's just good to be like going fast. So like, I have one script here where I have, two systems in here. I didn't separate these out into two class files, so getting crazy here. But
Also, work on main thread. Just from looking at this, prototyping, and you should always work on main thread.
That's a really great point. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think I'm doing any multi-threading stuff yet, but yeah, anyways, everything's just kind of in the idiomatic for eaches, which are super easy to write, and I don't have to create a new job struct for or anything.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really care too much about like naming things. Like my physics authoring is called Fall Guy authoring.
Oh, I think you're gonna, you have to take on the Unreal shirt next time. So.
Yeah. So yeah, and just like, it's not like really a good idea, I think, to like waste mental energy like naming thing, like coming up with like good, very specific names for anything at this phase, just because like you're going to be changing things so quickly.
Yeah. At max approximations.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, one of the reasons, like, as I was prototyping things, like I was kind of using the regular Unity physics system or the dots physics systems to begin with. And actually, let me see if I can find this video of it, because it is kind of funny, because things just kind of completely broke when I was implementing the rewind in there. But yeah, if you guys have any related things to talk about that while I find this video here.
Also, if Tobias needs to go soon, then
Oh yeah. What's the
if
time?
he has any final
10.
things, I think also.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the prototyping part. If there's anything I do when I prototype, that's very relevant to recommend. One obvious things, which is again not really prototyping thing, but enter play mode fast thing. Just turn it on immediately, and that's the same thing. You have a small project, you can count on half a finger all of the static things you have probably, and for those who doesn't know, the enter play mode fast as option, that the only real issue, and correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, is if you have static objects and static references or static values. Because
static fields won't get cleared. They will.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Static field. Yeah, so you need to deal with those, but you can do that with specific callbacks. So you specifically clear whatever you need to clear. So you can still have static things, but in a game jam, if you're not pulling in a bunch of assets that have their own issues with static fields, then you should just enter play mode fast, put that instantly on, and share the GitHub thing with your friends, and then start working on it and make sure that everybody using that, because that will that's like a few percentages of the time you're going to spend working. You're going to look at the recompile time and otherwise.
Well,
so
it's funny you mentioned that.
Turn off burst. Turn off.
Oh yeah. Turn off burst too. That's you don't need a performance.
Enter fast play mode option, and for the most part, it will work because you're now using ECS.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, that's funny that you mentioned the fast enter play mode options, because when I was recording this video, clearly did not have that setting enabled.
Also, I just got reminded of another good tip, which is when you're making a game jam, you still have to probably end up moving a camera, moving some managed sort of situation. The approach that I would recommend using there is just a static. You just use a static. Just accept the static, and
just hook your camera to a camera script.
UI, camera, so on is fine to go through a static. Even camera.main is fine for the camera.
Yeah.
Hook it in awake or start to some static thing, and then just go ham with that static reference.
Yeah, and especially the camera.main. Just use that in a system. It works. I mean,
isn't that? Yeah, in a prototype.
It like you can, if you have a system base, you can cache the camera, and then it's not even expensive.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, system base and not iSystem, because it can't handle the.
But you could use an a managed component, and then that would be fine. But for prototyping, it is slightly faster to use system base.
Or use Unity object ref.
That would be slower.
Can't use it because you can't dereference it in a non-game system-based system, right?
No, iSystem you can dereference it there.
Oh, you can.
No. The only restriction on an iSystem is you can't have managed fields. You can still have a managed class component that you attach to the iSystem system entity.
By the way, I gotta say that it feels very strange to me to say the word dereference, since I haven't worked with C++ in like 10 years. And like, because
dereference a pointer,
it's not really a thing in C#. Even if you're like unsafe, you rarely dereference and stuff like that.
Well, I do.
Well, yeah. Well, you obviously do dereference stuff if you're doing pointer stuff with unsafe.
And also I'm on the lower level technically, so it's
but still, like, for most of my unsafe stuff, I don't really like juggle that thing. I use
what do you do so much unsafe? Why do you use unsafe then?
Unchecked casting, for example.
Oh,
That's something that I use quite a bit in my game for different data throwing around.
have you tried using unsafe utility dot s? Yeah, that s.
Do they have?
Yeah,
do
they can
your
just cast.
Oh, so okay. I
You can
didn't
do a
know that.
reinterpret cast without having to
But
use unsafe.
it's still like a just normal like unsafe something going by in your helper class, I guess.
Yeah, in our helper
Yeah.
class it's unsafe, but
Yeah,
not
of
in your
course.
code.
Yeah. Anyway, sidetracked. Doesn't matter. Unsafe. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Well, there you're not dereferencing anything in there. You just have a reference to a pointer, but you're not dereferencing it. As
No, there's a
okay.
dereference. The little star there means it's dereferencing. It's technically
I'm
a dereference.
tired. Don't listen to what I say.
I will only listen to what you say.
Yeah, again, I'll get into this all this week. But anyways, what I wanted to show real quick is just this. As I was prototyping this, whoa, I was glitching a little bit. It's okay. We can kind of move the guy around a little bit. And then I'll go into reverse mode at some point.
If this was Ghost Simulator, that's called a feature.
That's very elegant.
Oh my god. Are you using physics?
Yeah, that was with the dots physics. So that's why I decided to basically create my own physics setup. Yeah.
Just sidetrack. We got this thing here. Can you elaborate a bit more on what you mean with static? So with enter play mode fast, the thing that means that it won't reload the assembly files that you need to run the game. And when you're not reloading them and you just run on them, you just like start running, play awake and start running and updating, then any static fields that you have anywhere in your system will not be reset, because to reset them you need to either reload the whole assembly, like put it out of memory and load it back again, or you need to have some way where Unity can go through all your static things and set them to something like default or whatever they need to be to work properly. So with static, if you have static fields scattered around your system, all of them will just stay as is when you press play in enter.
Like if you have a health counter that ticks up, or like a score that ticks up in a static, then that score gets set because you're in runtime and it gets incremented. But there's obviously nothing that then when you exit play mode tells it to then clear it out now. Normally, if you have play mode options on, then when you hit enter, it will reload that static, and so it will be set to 0. Now,
yeah. And I was going to say, you can manually recreate or reset it in your own create if you need to.
That's But I think a point here is like, normally when you have not a static thing, the variable is often tied to an instance and everything like that, and that's not really exactly what's happening, but it's like statics in C#.
It's a member of the class rather than an instance of the class.
Yeah, and it is static in C# or in most languages. It's just like they just are.
They're part of the.
It's like a globally accessible.
The thing that is part of what runs the code, and so as long as that code is still running.
So there's nothing needs to be created for them to be.
Yeah, you don't need an instance of the object to interface with that. Yeah.
But it's also important to note that dots makes this a lot easier. A lot of game object sort of situation ends up using statics in a worse way. At least in systems we have on create that zero sets it. If you were to have a static field where you just assign it directly to a number, that wouldn't work. Is our point here.
I think I should get to bed now. I've had a long day, but you should go on if you want. I know. That
I woke up 3 hours ago, so I'm all good.
I was up at 7 or something. So
good for you.
I'm approaching 18 hours now.
Seems like a productive day.
Yes. Well, I well, sort of. That's another thing.
Well, it was fun, streaming. With
Yeah.
you. It's not
This was
often
a-
we're
Yeah.
all here.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm glad we got the three of us together. So yeah, take care, enjoy
Yeah.
your evening, and enjoy your weekend ahead.
Yes, same to you. Good luck. See you next time. Bye,
Later.
everybody.
Yeah. And I think we'll just stay around because
Yeah.
there's still questions.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I did see a bunch of questions in here. Do you have anything else you want to say on prototyping, or do you want to kind of go through some of these questions, or?
No, I think I said the main things, which is just create singular components, do stuff on main thread, use statics for managed interop. Those are like the main points that help Dutch prototyping the most.
Right,
And
yeah.
just like put your variables in place and don't focus too much on writing bakers.
Yeah,
Which-
I guess it's in general don't necessarily need to worry about over engineering thing too much. At this point, it's mostly just like finding the quickest way to get your idea working and test out your idea for your game, and then in testing it to see if your idea is fun. That's when you can also find out maybe some potential performance issues with that.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that like Dutch thinking is half about performance. The other half is actually just efficiency in terms of development. Like how quickly can you get the thing working? That is the focus a lot of the time as well. And
Right.
theoretically speaking, you can end up with systems being quicker than that. Right now, there's some offering situations that make it hard in Unity today, but maybe that will be better.
Ooh.
Let's see. So this is a very good question. And oh my God, have I done so many different things when it comes to this recently? Yes, the attribute does indeed work. Initialize on load, to those that don't know, is something that gets called in the editor as soon as the domain loads. That is, as soon as you do a recompile, initialize on load gets called. And it gets called before any objects called awake and all the other stuff, right? So initialize on load you can use for stuff like creating what would be an interesting, I guess zero setting your static variables is one case that you could use it for. There's other cases, but I can't talk about those because those are internal. A lot of it is just like you need to set something up that happens at the start of everything, then use initialize on load because it is always ready when you reload a domain. And then there's an equivalent for the player called initialize runtime initialize on load, where you can say, hey, should it happen before scenes load, after scenes load, before anything loads, or before this splash screen loads? Which can also be good for like setting up player state and yeah.
That's great. Yeah, just kind of going through some of these other ones here. So, kind of fighting here.
All good.
Yeah, this is, I guess, kind of similar to this, but for systems, we have the attribute order to create the update in group, update after, update before. But for creation, there's only create after and create before. Why is there no create in group?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think obviously you could say part of it might be related to how do you visualize that in the systems view window. Obviously, that's not the whole story because we don't have it to in entities visualize everything. We do want to, but we don't have to. So I honestly don't know. I think that the way that you would do this yourself instead is that you would create the system. Like you disable automatic creation and then you create the system yourself. Because at that point you can also say which group. I guess you still can't specify the creation group, but you can at least specify logic around which group it is in.
Makes sense.
I'm also curious to know what kind of use cases you have for this.
Yeah, if it's just better organization or yeah. Did you have another one that you wanted to pull up?
Yeah. This one, can static be read-only? And yes, they can. The thing there is that they are A static read-only means that it can only be set during static initialization of the class, which is a very wordy thing to say, very termy. But it basically means that if you have a static class and you make a constructor for that static class, you can make static constructors. Then the first time you use any static field on it, it will call the static constructor. And the static constructor is allowed to set static read-only variables. And this is, by the way, also what you have to use for a concept in dots called shared statics. The problem is because there's a problem with statics, and statics, for instance, are not allowed in Burst. Burst can't support statics. And furthermore, that also means generally jobs don't support statics. So what you have to do instead is you have to create this thing called a shared static, and it has to be a read-only static variable, and then you set up that shared static during the static initialization. And this is allowed to, be set and changed through Burst.
Yeah, I did. I think I did a video on the shared statics a long time ago. It was kind of like buried in another tutorial video, but it was like kind of the main reason that I could get that concept to work was by using those shared statics. So it was kind of interesting.
And just to clarify, I will also mention this to the guy that I know worked on Crate before and after, just to see if he knows why he didn't add that.
Fair enough. In relation to prototyping, how do you feel about this one? I think if you're really trying to explore as much as possible, starting with game objects is usually best. You spend a lot of time writing code with dots.
I think that's a fair statement. I think in this particular scenario, we were talking about what it would take to prototype in dots.
Right. Yeah. So I guess maybe to rephrase the question a little bit, like, if you're working on a project where you're 100% certain you are going to be using dots and ECS, it's going to be ECS-based project. Does it make sense to start testing things out with game objects, or do you just kind of dive right into the ECS side because you're basically going to be building off of that?
I would say that it depends on the game, obviously, but for the most part, I would say start with dots immediately, as soon as you can, and do what we said with just writing everything out to get stuff working for prototyping. If you already know it's a dots game, then you probably also don't have a highly UI-based, managed components sort of based game, I would hope. Because if you do, then obviously if you want to prototype out your UI, don't prototype out your UI with dots. That's going to be a horrible nightmare right now. Also, don't prototype out your animation.
If you're making like a JRPG or something.
Yeah, it's like don't do that. But if it's like, I don't know, your character controller in your game, you have to start your character controller in dots if you want it to be dots. Otherwise, it's not going to work later on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and also as for reasons why you would choose to prototype in dots instead of in normal game objects to begin with, it's partly your game might require it. It's partly that you see the workflow as being easier for the type of thing you're working on. Like the workflow of just having a system that can do everything that you need is still very powerful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it kind of reduces rework in that kind of like phase after prototyping as you're really trying to build out that proof of concept and that kind of like initial maybe vertical slice of your project. But yeah, I mean, I definitely understand the sentiment of how writing dots code can be like kind of a larger volume of code, and especially if you're going to be quickly changing things where you're creating a system, let's see if this works, okay, that didn't work, let's try doing it another way. It can be a lot of code writing, and that can take a long time, especially if you don't have a lot of maybe templates and things set up like that. So I definitely get it, but I think overall I mean, I guess usually in my case, if I know I'm going to be using ECS, I just go with that straight away.
Yeah, and I think something interesting as well, if you've been working with ECS for a while, then there's also a case to be made that you have made some systems that actually just, immediately work for your game and can actually speed up the workflow. And so just naturally your game it's easier to make in ECS for prototyping because you can pull in your old stuff.
Yeah.
The systems
yeah.
are generally better tied to being separable, and you can get them away from everything else.
All right. I've been struggling with dots and AI recently. Tried and failed to implement a finite state machine. Do you guys have any tips or pointers on how to architect stuff out? So yeah, I guess this kind of goes into kind of like prototyping topics as well. Do you have any kind of general pointers on architecting new things out in a data oriented context?
Well, okay, I think you can't mix the two so much. I think that the question here is mostly on game AI, like behavioral trees, blackboards, all of that jazz.
Sure,
we
yeah.
should definitely have a stream, probably with Philip, who we had on earlier, because he, very interested in the topic and has a lot of great ideas on the topic.
Cool.
Personally, I've generally used a few different approaches, because there's some approaches you can take. One of them is the state of your character is determined by which components it has. This has plenty of problems, so I generally recommend against it. Another thing you can do, which is harder if you are not that confident in unsafe C#, which is just you can actually store function pointers on a component.
I remember you saying this before, yeah.
And I might show that at some point how one can do this. But it means that you can actually, like, flipping the state of a character is just flipping which functions that it uses. There's obviously also the other case of, like, you can make a simple enum that changes, but then you're locked into one system being the only owner of the thing. And that's not, very nice for AI, generally speaking. But I think we should have a further discussion at some point on how you do it. I think the general recommendation I would give is simply to use whatever you're comfortable with for the first and foremost, but also if you can figure out function pointers, definitely do that one. The function pointer one is definitely the easiest for final state, easiest to make flexible for final state machines.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, yeah, there's different approaches you can take to it. Do you want to have it so the, archetype of your entity kind of determines the state they're in, or do you have some type of value that changes on them, or, even better, like you're saying, just have a function pointer and then, set that function pointer, and then you have a system to just say, call whatever function is there.
Yeah. And I think also interestingly, this here is a, slight misconception, but a very classical one, which is because recently in C# they changed and added a new feature called unmanaged function pointers. So you don't actually need to have a delegate or the classic approach to how functions work in C#. You can just have an unmanaged function pointer and call it directly, and those are burstable. There's a way to burst those. So you can have a bursted function pointer that you can flip out. Yeah.
Let's see, where were we here?
And yeah, if you want to look it up, just search C# unmanaged function pointers. It was added to C# 9 and above.
Let's see. You come across anything else that you wanted to hit on here? Here's an interesting one about networking. So do you think for netcode for entities makes it easier to add networking to your game after the fact? I keep getting stalled learning about netcode, and it's slowing down my progress to prototype. I mean, this is definitely a kind of a tricky question, because I do know that I think one of the kind of like multiplayer based games that Unity has kind of been showcasing as one of their in production games developed with netcode for entities. I believe Laurent was telling me actually that game was not initially developed with netcode and everything built in. It was just kind of like a single player based project. Now, I think they knew that it was eventually going to be a multiplayer based project, so they kind of had some idea about where to draw lines and how they were creating their systems and everything to begin with. But they didn't start with the netcode for entities package in there. And then when they went to do that, then they were able to basically, add that in and then kind of, synchronize the data that they needed to synchronize through that way. Are you kind of familiar with this? I see you nodding your head a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think actually it's we actually have a like a point, like a main target that we want ECS to be as easily changeable to netcode as possible. And netcode also, works heavily with us in order to enable ECS features that are nice to integrate into netcode. And one of the examples of that is that, for instance, every entity has a simulate component on it by default because it's a netcode thing. You don't really have to use it in most ECS games, but as soon as you start using netcode, you have to figure out how the simulate component works. So that's like, we do heavily in entities think about how we can make it nice for netcode. There's also the fact that, like, if you have written your game in ECS, some of those systems are, gonna have to run only on the client. Some of them only have to run on the server. Normally, changing which is which on like a game object-based game can be sort of hard to do. Whereas in ECS, it's an attribute. It's literally just, this thing needs to run on the client. Yeah, this thing needs to run on the server. Yeah, this thing needs to run on both.
Yeah.
And of course, there is some sort of part of it that is about the mentality. But the more you have an ECS-like mentality, the more it will also fit with the netcode mentality, which makes it easily switchable.
Okay, so I'm looking. Yeah, someone reminded me of this. Didn't I make a video on function pointers and dots? And I think that's what I was thinking of when you mentioned this shared static. I'm trying to get to the 25. There you go. I think this is the video that it's on, how to make buff and debuff system with Unity ECS. As you can see, I'm using the entities.forEach version 0.50. So yeah, I'm using these delegates. Yeah, this was, when was this? 2022? 2 years ago? Yeah, I'd have to rewatch this video to see exactly what this was all about. But I think I did end up using this for this video, is what I feel like. Anyways.
Yes. I'm going to see if I can quickly type out an example of the C# syntax for function pointer.
Cool. Let's see.
Any other questions?
My prototype at the moment is just a huge God system and it's getting unmanageable. I wonder what dictates the time to swap from prototype to do it properly. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's just kind of like, as something continues to grow and, depending on where you want to take it, again, like we've kind of been saying, as your project kind of evolves, the more code that you write, I think some of those kind of boundary lines start to be kind of make themselves known a little bit, where it says, it makes sense to kind of split this off into its own thing. Or, maybe if it's not super obvious and you just have this one huge giant system, maybe it's just kind of worth it to like take some time to say, okay, what makes sense for me to kind of break things out, what things are still going to be kind of changing and I don't necessarily need to worry about, spending too much time on and everything like that. But I don't know. It's kind of a tricky problem. That's kind of like a case-by-case basis type thing, I guess.
Yeah, and I think if you're at the point where you're noticing things are getting unmanageable, it's probably also because you do have some feature sets that, have an overlap with each other. So the thing that you then have to do at this point is figure out what things are you doing multiple times and need to be pulled into their own like feature set, basically. Like you will figure out all these systems are all touching the same set of components. Maybe I can put them in a folder together and make it clear that these components are all being used by this set of systems. Sort of figure out what things do have multiples, and start. Sometimes adding a comment can sometimes be enough. Like I don't fundamentally believe that you need to comment all your code, because then it gets too much and you have too much fat.
And you got to maintain it too.
Yeah, but you should more think of your comments as like developers' commentary on. Now it's about adding a cube to the game because of X, Y, Z reason.
Right. Yeah, it's like things that aren't necessarily obvious, like just from reading the code. Like the other day, I was just implementing something where I had to like set the scale value on this is like a game object client project, and it was interfacing with some third party thing, but you had to basically put the scale as negative for it to show as positive inside the editor. So I like put a comment. I'm like, okay, I'm setting this as negative, so it's positive in the editor, because if I put it positive, then I get negative scale and everything's upside down. So it's just, additional kinds of things on there. And I think the game, the multiplayer game, it was a mobile, like MOBA type game. Was it called Hero-ish?
I've heard of it. I feel like I don't know.
I know Hero-ish is one of the ones that they kind of talked about. So that might be actually, you know what? It's probably in this. Is it this one here? Yeah. This is their the multiplayer blog post. So Hero-ish. I'm pretty sure this is the one.
One second. I'm still typing out the. Any other questions?
Summaries for public API are great, especially if they come with code samples or ASCII art.
Oh my god, I've read through so much code recently that is all filled with ASCII art, and I love it. It's so great.
I was gonna say, I know you're a fan of the ASCII art and little emoticons that I've seen pop up in the ECS changelog. I'm like, oh, I wonder who put that in there.
You might have an idea, I feel like. I think I have a sample now. Hopefully.
Let's see it.
There we go. Send. Share screen. This. Here. So this is an example, and to those that haven't used SharpLab before, I can definitely recommend it for like prototyping and typing out code examples. So I have this little component here. This could be an iComponent data, right? And the syntax definitely looks very wonky, because you have to specify that it's an unmanaged function pointers, because you can have managed function pointers that contain managed data, and you have to say that it's cdecal because that's what Burst uses. But as soon as you set this function pointer semantics here, then this is the return type. Okay. And if you want to have like an additional value, then you can add arguments there.
Like if you want to return a tuple, you mean?
Yeah, well, more like what's it called? Like this is the arguments of your function.
Oh, okay. Like it's similar to like an event, basically. Like you have the return type as well as the input types.
Right now, I would have to change this to pass in a value.
Right.
And then obviously pass in an actual value here. So that's one part of it. Now that you've specified that, then you also need to specify that this is actually a cdecal function. This semantic is not here. Instead, in Unity, you have to do something, add a mono p invoke instead. It's just called mono p invoke. And it
instead of that unmanaged callers only, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. This is a way too new C# thing that isn't part of our runtime yet. But you can. There's an alternative you can use instead. And I will show that when we actually make, the demo on how you can do a finite state machine. But the basic gist is you just add that to a static method, right? You can see this is just a normal static method. And that makes it possible for you to get a reference to that function and save it in your component. And then anytime, you could save this in a component in an onCreate. You could put this code in an onCreate and it would be fine. And then anytime that you actually need to use it, you could loop over, get the component, and then call the function here. and you could even change it out to something entirely different later on. So like save it to a new function that you have somewhere. So this quickly becomes very powerful for finite state machines. Anytime that you need to, have behavior that is heavily function based, like in object-oriented programming, you have virtual functions, and they help you with like, oh, your ogre has a different attack pattern than your elf sort of situation. Here,
Right.
this is what you can pass in as your different attack functions, and change out, and yeah, it's very customizable.
I like it. You should have, although made the print line say this.
Yes. Hello.
See what
world.
I did there? Yep.
Yeah. I think that's actually the point of that little mountain that they put. But yeah, I hope someone at least got something out of it. Otherwise, we're gonna have to repeat it at some point during.
Sounds like this guy did.
Yeah.
I like it too.
And especially for code generation, this is so like it's fairly easy to do with code generation, and it makes it very flexible.
There you go. Might actually help with something I'm doing code gen for.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I can share it. That's actually another nice thing about SharpLab. The link you have above is immediately shareable.
Oh, cool.
Like
It just like gives you your own little environment, and then
yeah, anytime I type anything, this URL up here changes.
oh, interesting. So it's almost like a
means-
hash or something.
Actually, it's just the entire text format in hexadecimal. A 64 character encoding, base encoding. Yeah, 64-bit hash encoding, I think it's called. There's a name for it. 64. It's because if is not enough. You need all the t greater than t and less than t and so on. Just hexadecimal is too little information. Anyways, yeah, I can share this link in the Discord.
Cool.
Actually, I can just share it in chat probably.
That works too.
Anyways, it might be it, I think. Base 64. Yeah, someone said it.
Coolio. Yeah. All right, we can go ahead and wrap this up. We had a nice Q&A section at the end here, so we can kind of wrap things up here with our dynamic allocations. Do you have anything prepared here for
I do actually.
All righty.
Give me 1 second while I find it. Because I had it up a second ago.
So yeah, these are just kind of fun things that we like to share with the community. Just cool, like random little games or books or assets or even courses.
Yeah. Also, the link I will have to send on Discord. It was too long.
Oh.
So the person that's a big old link. Yeah, it was actually big. So yeah, I'll put it in the Discord. But anyways, yeah, the thing that I want to point out that I've recently been doing with my brother, who he's had a few programming things in his studies before, but he's never really programmed before. And then I saw this course, and I was like, "Oh my god, this looks so fun and perfect!" And my brother and I can do it together. Generally, I'm not a big fan of courses because a lot of them is made by people who are not really out there in the industry, or they try too heavily to focus on like programming patterns or like very dogmatic style, sort of styled thinking programming. Whereas this course here is done by a dude who has been out in not so much the game industry. I think he was for a little bit, but he has been out in the industry doing stuff like this before, and it's a very objective view on programming he has. So there's not a lot of like styling semantics on programming, but instead what he does is like it's you get to learn assembly, specifically MIPS assembly. You get to program and compile that MIPS assembly for the PS1 and then run it on a PS1. And you can even it only takes 70-ish lines of MIPS assembly in order to draw a triangle on a PlayStation 1.
Only 70. All right.
That is very few when you think that even something like OpenGL can sometimes take like I don't know, 100, 150 lines to draw a triangle in C, right? Which is a higher abstraction. So this course like just puts all of the information that lives around like tooling of PS1 development and puts it in a course and like says these are the instructions that are nice to use. So like what I really find great about this course is it's not necessarily that it's, you know, teaching something that you couldn't learn yourself. You can definitely learn this yourself, but it's that it puts everything into one place. This is so much fun. Like actually making a PS1, you basically build your own game engine. You get to build the physics, you get to build the graphics, the 3D rendering, learn stuff like the PS1 GPU is actually 2D. There's nothing on the PlayStation that does 3D on the GPU. It is actually an entirely different processor that does 3D. So yeah, no, I can definitely recommend this course.
Awesome. How far along are you in this course now?
I got to just before, here. We're making pictures, a drawing on the screen with assembly. And
awesome.
after that, you now move to the high-level language called C.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I actually, if you share your screen again, I was taking a look at some of his other courses because there were some interesting ones. I'll show you the one that I was thinking of taking a look into.
Screen in 1 second. There you go. Yeah. Do you want to see the course page?
Yeah, go to the courses. I was looking at the 3D computer graphics programming one. So it's basically you create from scratch in C your own software renderer. So like not going through the GPU or anything like that, but just like figuring out everything that needs to take place to render 3D graphics just using the CPU. So then, you know, in theory, that'll give you a better kind of a lower level understanding of, you know, all the stuff that, you know, OpenGL, DX and everything needs to use to kind of, you know, render things on the GPU side.
Yes, exactly. I think Pikuma, while I do, you know, as someone that believes that learning should be sort of free or at least like available for free, it does hurt the pricing, but oh my God, I think
it's a little pricey, but
exactly. But I do think it's worth it. Because he is so good at explaining something that is almost a forgotten craft, like how do the things we work with daily actually work under the hood. It's also, you know, very data oriented.
Yeah, actually, there is another course where they specifically use I think it's the 2D C++ engine development.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's ECS.
Yeah, you use ECS but with Lua scripting.
Oh yeah, okay, that's cool. Because I also saw his Lua course. It's not only about learning Lua, but it's also about how do you implement Lua in your own engine or so on. Like if you have a native C or C++ project and you want to have a scripting backend that is Lua, this course also teaches you that.
Yeah, I think that's actually what the game engine, the 2D game engine one kind of does. It shows you how to use like a Lua scripting language after basically making your own C++ game engine. Oh. So I want to go through all of these courses. Did
you know about him before?
No. How'd you come across this guy?
I think I just saw it random on Twitter one day. Oh, X, sorry.
The platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah. He just released his PS1 course, and I saw that and I was like immediately hooked.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I want to go through the computer graphics one personally, but
yeah, there's nothing cooler to me than being able to see how things actually work under the hood.
Yeah, totally. And especially you, I mean, you're an engine developer, so it is very, very helpful to your job.
Yeah, true.
All right, so for mine, I'm kind of doubling up on one a little bit here, but Braid Anniversary Edition, like I mentioned, it's coming out next week on Tuesday, and like I mentioned, the episode for next week, I'm going to be showing how I recreated the kind of like Braid time rewind mechanic using Unity ECS and everything like that. But Jonathan Blow has been putting out the Braid Anniversary Edition podcast. So this is episode 3, just came out today. The whole idea with this is for the Braid Anniversary Edition, they've recorded like a ton of commentary, and they said I think like 15 hours plus made it into the game. Just going into like very deep detail about programming, design, art topics, everything like that. And then, they recorded like 60 total hours of like interviews, basically. It's essentially like a podcast. So then what they decided to do is just release the, mostly unedited form of this, of all these interviews in a podcast form. So the first 2 episodes, it was actually Casey Muratori was interviewing Jonathan Blow. The first episode was just kind of like how he came up with the idea of, Braid and the time rewind mechanic and everything like that. And then the second episode kind of goes into a little bit more of like the technical topics of how he like started implementing the time rewind mechanic and kind of like talking about like the initial design of it and everything like that. And then, so yeah, this one just came out today. I haven't gotten a chance to listen to this, but this one looks like it's going to be more about the art side. So I've just been completely fascinated with these past couple episodes and very much looking forward to this new one here.
I wonder how it differs from like Indie Game the movie, because it's kind of interesting to think that game did actually already have some sort of big background information on how it was developed, like behind the scenes. Because it was, part of Indie Game the movie. Back in
it is part of Indie Game the movie, and actually Jonathan Blow has a GDC talk about the time rewind mechanic.
Yeah, isn't that what you're basing your stuff on?
Yep. This implementation of time rewind in Braid. So yeah, definitely recommend checking this one out. I'm basically implementing exactly this in ECS. So again, we'll have more information on that for you next week. Yeah, I know, right?
That's actually, it's kind of fun too, because in the course for PS1, you can use a modern machine today because people have re-implemented the old compiler and SDK for working on new machines. But the actual original way you developed games for the PS1 was on a Windows XP machine, and therefore the SDK is also for that, and the emulator is also for that. So the course actually teaches you how to set up an emulator to run Windows XP if you want to try the original way of making it.
Nice.
You're also allowed to. He also shows how to do it with a modern machine, but it's kind of cool.
So GDC has a bunch of archived videos available on their YouTube channel. If you go into the GDC vault, I think a lot of the talks from previous years are available for free, but I think it's like the more recent year or past couple years, those ones are locked behind a paywall.
Yeah, I think they have a specific system for this sort of thing. Like when stuff can go out, some people can get it out earlier or released on their own in weird ways. There's all sorts of semantics here.
Definitely.
Yeah. But, also, I want to quickly
go ahead.
address some of them, which is one said 2,000 lines. Last time I tried, it was only 900 only. And it doesn't come with a PS1, but the things that you make could run on a PS1, and he does show how you can burn a CD, a DVD. And run it on a PS1.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
God dang, I want to take that course now too.
And if you have a PS2, you can technically also call it on that because a PS2 is
back compat, yeah.
Yeah, and some PS3s.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can even get the PS3 with the back compat.
Yeah, and also to this guy, I definitely agree with you there. It does take a special mindset. I will say something that's very interesting about this course is that all of the old CPUs that was like N64, PS2, and PS1 all used MIPS processors, and they are what's known as a RISC architecture. And a RISC architecture stands for
reduced instruction set.
Exactly. It means that there's not a lot of instructions to learn. It's very minimal, so it's actually sort of fun to write instead of having to learn all the particular weird Intel instructions or ARM is actually also Risk, but there's not many instructions you have to learn. It's so few. It's so fucking few, which makes it a lot more fun. But it does take a twisted mind to like.
Sounds good. All right. And with that, we can go ahead and wrap up our nearly 3-hour-long episode of the Hot Path Show. It's been a very nice, special Power of Two episode. We had, both of my Scandinavian friends on here for the first 2 hours of it about. But thank you, Dani, for hanging around a little longer and answering some questions and everything. And just to remind you all, you can support us over on Patreon and now through YouTube memberships. I do want to give a special shout out to our supporters at our CPU register tier, which is the highest tier. So thank you to eCool and Christian Luke for your support. And then what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the podcast. You can get our show in podcast form once again on Spotify. It is available in video as well as audio formats. I have the link down in the description of this video. You can also get the RSS link if you want to just paste that into whatever podcast app you have if you want the audio-only version of that. So anyways, with that, we can wrap up our episode. Dani, you got any parting words for us here today?
No, this was fun. I got to know out a little as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a ton of fun stuff here. And once again, we're going to have a very exciting episode next week where I'm going to be showing my little recreation of Braid using Unity dots and ECS. So with that, hope you all have a fantastic weekend ahead, and we'll see you in the next one. Later, everybody.